When a struggling mechanic stopped to help a stranded billionaire in a wheelchair, he had no idea his simple act of kindness would expose a corporate scandal worth millions and change both their lives forever. But sometimes the most dangerous thing you can do is tell the truth to people who profit from lies. Stay with me until the end of this story. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what city you're watching from so I can see how far this tale travels. The fluorescent lights in Ethan Cole's garage flickered twice before dying completely, plunging the cramped workspace into semi-darkness. Ethan didn't bother looking up from the carburetor he was rebuilding. He'd been expecting it. The electric bill sat unopened on his cluttered desk, third notice stamped across the envelope in angry red letters. He knew what it said. Past due. Disconnect imminent. Please remit payment. He couldn't remit anything, not this month. Daddy, why'd the lights go off? Lily's voice drifted from the small office area he'd converted into a makeshift playroom. She was supposed to be coloring, staying warm while he worked through the Saturday backlog. 6 years old and already too perceptive for her own good. Just a bulb, sweetheart, Ethan called back, wiping grease from his hands onto jeans that had seen better years. We're almost done here anyway. That was a lie. He had 3 more repairs lined up, each one desperately needed to make rent. But the Hendersons' van was turning into a nightmare. The transmission was shot, not just slipping like they'd claimed, and he'd have to eat the cost of parts because he'd already quoted them a price they could barely afford. He recognized that look in Mrs. Henderson's eyes when she dropped off the keys. The same look he saw in his own mirror every morning. Desperation with a thin coat of dignity painted over it. 32 years old, and this is what he had to show for it. A garage that was bleeding money, a daughter who deserved so much better, and a skill set that kept them fed but never quite comfortable. His ex-wife had said he lacked ambition. Maybe she was right. Amanda had wanted a husband who dreamed bigger than the next oil change, who saw himself running a chain of shops or transitioning into dealership management. Instead, she got Ethan, who just wanted to fix things and make enough to keep his kid happy. She'd left when Lily was 3. Met some corporate finance guy at her gym, someone who wore suits that cost more than Ethan made in a month. The divorce papers came with a custody arrangement that was laughably one-sided in Ethan's favor. Amanda got every other weekend and seemed relieved by it. The child support checks were sporadic at best. Ethan had stopped resenting her somewhere around year 2. Mostly. Daddy, I'm cold. He looked toward the office. The space heater he'd been running must have been on the same circuit as the lights. Great. He walked over, found Lily bundled in his old work jacket, just her face visible above the stained canvas collar. Her coloring book was open to a half-finished princess scene. She'd been working on it for 3 days, rationing the 4 crayons they had left. Something in his chest cracked a little. Tell you what, he said, kneeling beside her. How about we take a break, go to the park for a bit? Her eyes lit up. Really? Really. Fresh air will do us good, and it's free. He tried to keep the bitterness out of that last word. Mostly failed. 20 minutes later, they were walking the trail at Riverside Park, Lily's small hand tucked into his. The November afternoon had that particular kind of cold that wasn't quite winter but was done pretending to be fall. Most people had the good sense to stay inside. The park was nearly empty, just a few die-hard joggers and one elderly man throwing tennis balls for an arthritic golden retriever. Ethan had $43 in his checking account. Lily's winter coat from last year was getting too small. He'd been rotating the same 3 meals for 2 weeks because that's what stretched the grocery budget. But right now, walking this trail with his daughter, chattering about the really big pine cone she'd found, none of that seemed to matter quite as much. Look, Daddy, is that lady okay? Lily was pointing down the path where it curved around a small stone bridge. Ethan followed her gaze and saw what she meant. A woman in a wheelchair sat motionless about 50 yards ahead, positioned awkwardly near the edge of the cracked pavement. Something about her posture looked wrong. Stiff, frustrated. Stay close to me, Ethan said, picking up his pace. As they got near, details resolved. The woman was younger than he'd first thought, maybe 30, though it was hard to tell with her face turned away. Dark hair pulled back in what had probably started as an elegant style, but was now coming loose. She wore expensive-looking athletic gear, the kind of technical fabric that cost more per yard than most people's entire outfits. Her wheelchair was top of the line, all carbon fiber and precision engineering, or it should have been. The left front wheel was canted at an ugly angle, and even from a distance, Ethan could see the brake cable hanging loose. "Excuse me," he called out as they approached. "Do you need help?" The woman's head snapped around. Her expression cycled through annoyance to wariness, to something that might have been embarrassment in the space of a heartbeat. Up close, she was striking in that very specific way that came from a combination of genetics and expensive maintenance. High cheekbones, clear skin, eyes that were an unusual shade of gray-green, the kind of beautiful that made you aware of every stain on your own clothing. "I'm fine," she said. Her voice had that crisp edge of someone used to giving instructions that got followed. "Thank you." Ethan stopped a respectful distance away. Lily half hid behind his leg, peeking out at the stranger. "Your wheel's damaged," he said, keeping his tone neutral. "Looks like the hub assembly's come loose. The brake cable's disconnected too." The woman's jaw tightened. "I'm aware. I've already called for assistance." "How long ago?" 20 minutes. Maybe 30. She glanced at an Apple Watch that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. "They're experiencing high call volume, apparently. Translation, they weren't coming anytime soon." Ethan had heard that particular customer service line enough times to recognize it. He looked at the wheelchair again, letting his eyes track over the problem. The hub hadn't just come loose, the mounting bracket was cracked. That was a manufacturing defect, not normal wear. And the brake cable hadn't disconnected so much as snapped where it fed through the housing. "I can fix it," he heard himself say. "Temporarily, at least. Get you mobile again." The woman studied him with an expression he couldn't quite read, calculating something. "Why would you do that?" The question caught him off guard. "Because you're stuck?" People walk past stuck all the time. There was no self-pity in her voice, just flat observation, especially when the stuck person looks like they can afford to solve their own problems. Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. She wasn't wrong. The park had probably had a dozen visitors since she'd broken down, and he and Lily were the first to stop. "Is the lady going to be okay?" Lily whispered, tugging on his hand. The woman's expression softened slightly when she looked at Lily. "I hope so, sweetheart. Your daddy thinks he can help." "My daddy fixes everything," Lily said with absolute 6-year-old conviction. "He's the best fixer in the whole world." Ethan felt heat creep up his neck. "I'm just a mechanic, but yeah, I can probably get you working again. Mind if I take a look?" The woman hesitated, then gave a small nod. "Victoria. My name's Victoria." "Ethan, this is Lily." He knelt beside the wheelchair, pulling his multi-tool from his pocket. The thing was older than Lily, held together with electrical tape and stubbornness, but every implement still worked. He'd rebuilt it twice. The wheel hub was worse up close. The crack in the bracket had propagated through almost the entire mounting surface. A proper fix would require replacement parts, and probably some welding. But he could jury-rig something that would hold. "Do you have any zip ties?" he asked Victoria. She blinked. "In my wheelchair?" "Sometimes people keep a repair kit. This model, I mean." He was already pulling out the screwdriver attachment, working at the damaged bracket. "Sync Motion Pro Series 4, right? These are supposed to come with emergency supplies." Victoria stared at him. "How do you possibly know that?" "I read." He shrugged. "Can't afford much entertainment, so I go through manufacturer specs like some people watch TV. Your left magazine pocket, there should be a small black case." She reached down, feeling around, and pulled out exactly what he'd described. Inside were zip ties, a length of cable, basic tools, and what looked like a laminated instruction card she'd probably never looked at. "Huh," she said quietly. Ethan worked quickly, his hands moving through the familiar rhythm of diagnosis and repair. The hub couldn't be properly secured, but he could stabilize it enough for slow, careful movement. The brake cable was actually the easier fix. He rerouted it through a different channel, used 2 zip ties to secure the housing, and tested the tension until it felt right. "Daddy's real quiet when he fixes things," Lily informed Victoria helpfully. "He says it's because the machines are talking to him." Victoria's mouth quirked. "Is that true?" Ethan glanced up. "Not literally, but if you pay attention, broken things tell you what's wrong. Most people don't listen." "And you do." "It's my job." He went back to the wheel, testing the play in the hub. Still too much, but it would hold. Probably. This is temporary. You'll need to get to a repair shop as soon as possible. Don't take any corners too fast, and definitely don't trust the brake at full speed. How temporary? He sat back on his heels, considering. It should get you home, but I wouldn't push it beyond that, and honestly, Victoria, this shouldn't have failed in the first place. How old is this chair? 6 months. That's a problem. This hub assembly fractured from metal fatigue, but it shouldn't show fatigue for at least 5 years of normal use. And this brake cable, he held up the frayed end. This wasn't just wear and tear. Look at the brake pattern. That's a defect in the cable itself. Victoria took the cable from him, examining it closely. Her expression was unreadable. You can tell that just by looking? I've been staring at broken things for 15 years. You learn to see patterns. He stood, brushing dirt off his knees. Wherever you bought this, you should file a complaint. Maybe get them to inspect the rest of the chair. If these 2 components failed prematurely, there might be other problems waiting to happen. I didn't buy it. Victoria's voice had gone quiet. I designed it. My company manufactures it. The words landed like a stone in still water. Ethan looked at the wheelchair again, then at Victoria, recalibrating everything he'd assumed about this encounter. Oh, he said inadequately. Oh, she agreed. An awkward silence stretched between them. Lily, oblivious, had wandered a few feet away to investigate a pile of leaves. I should pay you, Victoria said finally, for the repair. Don't worry about it. I insist. You took time out of your day, used your skills, to do something that took 10 minutes and cost nothing. Ethan cut her off gently. I didn't help you for money. I helped because you needed help. Those aren't the same thing. Victoria studied him with that calculating look again. Most people would take the money. I'm not most people. And honestly, if you really want to thank me, get that chair properly fixed. Make sure whatever shop you use documents everything. Because if this is happening to you, it's happening to other people who bought, he caught himself, who bought from your company. She nodded slowly. You think it's widespread? I think metal fatigue in a 6-month-old precision component is a red flag the size of Texas. But I'm just a mechanic. What do I know? Apparently more than my engineering team. There was an edge in her voice now, something sharp and angry that wasn't directed at him. Thank you, Ethan. Truly. You've helped more than you realize. He shrugged, uncomfortable with the gratitude. Just did what needed doing. Lily came running back, clutching a handful of dried leaves like treasure. Daddy, can we go see the ducks before we leave? Sure, sweetheart. He looked at Victoria. You good from here? I will be. She was already pulling out her phone, but she paused. Can I ask you something? What made you stop? You said people walk past stuck all the time, but you didn't. Ethan thought about it. About Amanda leaving because he wasn't ambitious enough. About the disconnect notice waiting back at the garage. About every time someone had walked past him when he was the one who needed help. Maybe I'm tired of living in a world where people walk past, he said finally. Figured I could at least not add to the problem. Victoria smiled, and it transformed her face completely. The calculation and wariness dropped away, leaving something genuine. That's a good answer. It's the only one I have. He took Lily's hand. Take care of yourself, Victoria. And seriously, get that chair looked at by professionals. They were halfway to the duck pond when Lily piped up. Was she a princess, Daddy? What makes you say that? She was pretty like a princess, and she had a fancy chair, like a throne that moves. Ethan laughed despite himself. No, baby, just a person who needed some help. But you helped her, like the princes in the stories. I think you've been reading too many fairy tales. There's no such thing as too many fairy tales, Lily said with absolute certainty. They spent 20 minutes watching the ducks, Lily narrating an elaborate story about their secret duck kingdom and the dramatic politics of breadcrumb distribution. Ethan let her voice wash over him, only half listening, his mind stuck on the broken wheelchair and Victoria's face when he'd pointed out the defects. She'd looked worried. No, more than worried. She'd looked like someone who just had a very bad suspicion confirmed. By the time they got back to the garage, the sun was starting to set. The lights were still out. Ethan managed to get the breaker reset, but the intermittent flickering told him it was only a temporary reprieve. He'd have to call the power company Monday, try to work out a payment plan. Again. He made Lily dinner, boxed mac and cheese, carrot sticks, apple slices from the bag of discount produce he'd grabbed at the grocery outlet. She ate at his desk while he went back to work on the Henderson van, stealing glances at her between diagnostic checks. She'd pulled out her coloring book again, humming something tuneless and happy. This was enough, he told himself. As long as she was fed and safe and happy, everything else was just details. The lie was getting harder to maintain. It was almost 8 when he heard the vehicles pull up outside. Plural. Ethan frowned, setting down his socket wrench. The garage had been closed for hours. He'd flipped the sign himself, but through the grimy front window he could see headlights. Multiple sets. "Stay in the office," he told Lily, wiping his hands. "Is it Mommy?" "Don't think so, baby." He walked to the front door, unlocked it, and stepped outside into the cold. 3 black SUVs were parked in his lot, sleek, expensive things that looked like they'd been detailed that morning. As he watched, doors opened and people emerged. Men in suits, a woman with a tablet, and from the middle vehicle, a familiar figure in a wheelchair. Victoria. She looked different now, put together. The wind-blown hair from the park was styled again. She'd changed into business attire, slacks and a blazer that probably cost what Ethan made in a week. The wheelchair had been replaced too, a different model that moved smoothly across the cracked pavement. "Ethan Cole?" one of the suits asked. "That's me. Can I help you folks?" Victoria rolled forward. In the harsh security lighting of the garage lot, her expression was all business. "We need to talk. May we come inside?" Ethan's first instinct was to say no. This felt wrong. Too many people, too much formality, too much expensive everything converging on his failing garage. But Victoria was looking at him with something that might have been urgency under the professional mask. "Let me check on my daughter first," he said. Lily was exactly where he'd left her, coloring carefully inside the lines. She looked up when he entered. "Who's here?" "Some people I need to talk to for a minute. Grown-up stuff. You okay hanging out here?" "Can I watch the tablet?" They had a first-generation iPad someone had traded for a brake job 2 years ago. The battery lasted about 30 minutes. "Sure, sweetheart, keep the volume down." When he returned to the lot, the group had multiplied. At least 8 people now, and more emerging from the SUVs. They were unloading equipment, cases, what looked like wheelchair components. "What is this?" Ethan asked. Victoria gestured to the garage bay. "Can we use your space? I'll pay for your time." "That's not... Okay, hang on. Someone want to tell me what's going on?" One of the suits stepped forward, mid-40s, graying at the temples, carrying himself with the confidence of someone who expected to be listened to. "Mr. Cole, my name is Richard Pemberton. I'm VP of Operations for Sync Motion Technologies. Ms. Sinclair has explained the situation with her wheelchair this afternoon, and your observations about the component failures." "Okay," Ethan said slowly. "We've received 17 customer complaints in the past 3 months about similar issues. Wheel hub failures, brake malfunctions, bearing seizures, all in the Pro Series 4 line. 17's not that many, is it? How many units have you sold?" 4,200, Victoria's voice was flat. 17 complaints means 17 people who bothered to report it. Industry standard suggests actual failure rate is 3 to 5 times documented complaints. We could be looking at 60 to 85 defective wheelchairs in active use. Ethan did the math. That's a 2% failure rate. In 6 months, Pemberton added, for a product rated for 10-year life cycle. At current trajectory, we could see 15 to 20% failures by year 2. Jesus. "We've been investigating for 2 weeks, Victoria said. My engineering team insists the design is sound. Our manufacturing partner says they're following specifications exactly. Quality control reports show everything within tolerance, but the failures keep happening, and no one can tell me why." She rolled closer and Ethan saw past the business facade to something raw underneath. Frustration. Maybe fear. "Then I broke down in the park," she continued, "and a mechanic I'd never met diagnosed the problem in 10 minutes. Spotted manufacturing defects my entire engineering department missed. So I'm here because I'm out of options, and you're apparently the only person who can tell me what's actually wrong." Ethan looked at the assembled group, suits and technicians, and Victoria herself, then back at his failing garage with the flickering lights and the overdue bills and his daughter watching cartoons on a dying tablet. "I'm just a mechanic," he said again. "No." Victoria's eyes met his. "You're someone who pays attention, who listens to broken things, And right now, I need that more than I need another engineer telling me the math says everything's fine. What exactly are you asking? Inspect these components. Tell me what you see that we're missing. I'll pay whatever your rate is. I don't have a rate for this kind of work. Then name a number. Ethan thought about the electric bill, the rent, Lily's too small coat. Why me? You've got experts. Because my experts have incentives to tell me comfortable lies. You don't. Victoria gestured to the cases being unloaded. These are parts from 7 different failed units, different production batches, different assembly dates, different warehouses. The only common factor is they all broke wrong and broke early. I need someone with no stake in this to tell me the truth. And if the truth is something you don't want to hear, then at least I'll know what I'm dealing with. Ethan looked at the components emerging from the cases. Hubs, cables, bearing assemblies, brake systems, all precision manufactured, all expensive, all failed. Behind him, through the garage window, he could see Lily's silhouette. She'd fallen asleep sitting up, the tablet dark beside her. He thought about Victoria's words from the park. People walk past, stuck all the time. Okay, he said, but I'm doing this on my terms. No one tells me what to find or how to find it. I call it like I see it. And if your people have a problem with my methods or my conclusions, we're done. Deal? Victoria smiled slightly. Deal. And for the record, my rate is $200 an hour. Take it or leave it. He'd pulled the number from nowhere, expecting her to negotiate. Instead, Pemberton just nodded and made a note on his phone. Done. When can you start? Ethan looked at his watch. Almost 9. Tomorrow morning, 10 o'clock. I need to get my daughter home and put to bed. Tomorrow's Sunday, Pemberton said, as if this mattered. Yeah, and I don't work Sundays unless it's an emergency. This has been an emergency for 3 months already. One more night won't kill anyone. He regretted the words as soon as he said them, because Victoria's face went pale. Actually, she said quietly, it might. We had a complaint last week from a customer whose chair failed going down a wheelchair ramp at the library. She fell. Broke her arm. She's fine, but if that had happened somewhere else, somewhere with stairs or traffic, she didn't finish the sentence. Didn't have to. Ethan closed his eyes, opened them. Okay, let me get Lily settled. Give me 30 minutes. It took 40. Lily woke up cranky and confused when he carried her to the truck, and she fought him on the car seat buckles. She cried because he'd forgotten to bring her coloring book. She was asleep again before they made it 3 blocks. His apartment was a 20-minute drive, a 1-bedroom in a complex that had been going downhill for a decade. He carried Lily upstairs, got her into pajamas without fully waking her, tucked her into his bed. She slept in his room because the 1-bedroom was really more of a large closet, and she'd outgrown the toddler bed that barely fit inside it. He called Mrs. Chen from downstairs. She answered on the 3rd ring, sounding groggy. Ethan, it's late. I know, I'm sorry. Emergency work thing. Can you check on Lily in an hour? She's asleep in my apartment, doors unlocked. Mrs. Chen had been watching Lily in emergencies since Ethan moved in 3 years ago. She was 76, widowed, and seemed to genuinely enjoy the company. Of course, dear, take your time. He drove back to the garage faster than he should have, mind already working through diagnostic trees. The lot had transformed in his absence. Portable work lights had been set up, turning the space into something that resembled a professional inspection facility. The components were laid out on clean white tarps, organized and labeled. Victoria was directing the setup from her wheelchair, pointing and instructing. She saw Ethan pull in and rolled over. Your daughter okay? Out like a light. Neighbors keeping an ear out. He looked at the organized chaos. You don't waste time. Can't afford to. She handed him a tablet. This has all the documentation. Engineering specs, manufacturing protocols, quality control data, customer complaints with identifying information redacted, everything we have. Ethan took it reluctantly. I'm better with my hands than with spreadsheets. Then start with your hands. The data's there if you need it. He walked to the first tarp, knelt down, picked up a hub assembly. The damage was immediately obvious, the same crack pattern he'd seen on Victoria's chair, but more progressed. This one had completely separated. When did this one fail? He asked. Pemberton consulted his own tablet. October 23rd. User reported sudden loss of wheel stability during normal operation. No impact, no excessive use. User weight? 138 pounds. Ethan turned the assembly over in his hands. The fracture originated at the mounting point and propagated outward. Classic fatigue failure, but accelerated. Way too accelerated. He spent the next 2 hours going through components one by one, his initial discomfort with the audience fading as he fell into the familiar rhythm of analysis. Victoria and her team watched mostly in silence, occasionally asking questions that Ethan answered without looking up. The brake cables all showed the same internal flaw, microscopic stress points in the weave that caused premature failure. The bearing assemblies had incorrect tolerances, close enough to pass inspection but wrong enough to cause accelerated wear. Every single component had something wrong with it. Small things, subtle things, the kind of defects that wouldn't show up in standard testing but would absolutely cause problems in real-world use. "This isn't random failure," Ethan said finally, sitting back. His knees hurt from kneeling on concrete for 2 hours. "This is systematic. Someone, somewhere in your supply chain, is cutting corners." "The manufacturer," Pemberton started, "is using substandard materials or processes. Yeah. Look at this." Ethan held up one of the hub assemblies, pointing to the metal composition. "This is supposed to be aircraft-grade aluminum alloy, right? 7075-T6? Victoria nodded. "This isn't 7075, it's 6061 maybe. Cheaper, softer, completely wrong for load-bearing applications. Someone swapped the material spec and hoped no one would notice. The tolerances are off too. See these machining marks? They're inconsistent. That suggests automated tooling that's either miscalibrated or using worn equipment." He grabbed another component. "The brake cables are even worse. These aren't precision woven. They're standard commercial-grade cables with the wrong tensile strength. And these bearings," he rolled one between his fingers, "these are probably reject stock from another production run. See the surface pitting? That's not wear. That's a manufacturing defect that should have been caught during QC." The garage had gone very quiet. "How much would this save?" Victoria's voice was carefully controlled. "Switching materials, using reject components, cutting quality control?" Ethan shrugged. "I'm not a manufacturing guy, but if I had to guess, maybe 30 to 40% per unit, more if they're also skimping on labor and inspection time." "We pay premium rates specifically to avoid this," Pemberton said. His face had gone red. "We have contracts, specifications, quality guarantees." "You have paperwork," Ethan interrupted. "Someone's real good at making paperwork say what you want to hear while doing something completely different in the factory." Victoria had gone very still. "Who's the contractor?" "Precision Mobility Solutions," Pemberton said. "We've used them for 3 years. They've been flawless." "They've been lying!" Victoria's voice could have cut glass. "And we didn't catch it because we trusted the paperwork more than the product." She looked at Ethan. "Can you prove this? In a way that would stand up to legal scrutiny?" "I'm not a lawyer or an expert witness. But yeah, I can document everything I found. Probably get the materials independently tested if you want metallurgical analysis. Any decent forensic engineer would reach the same conclusions." "Good." Victoria pulled out her phone, started typing. "Richard, I want a full audit of Precision Mobility Solutions starting tomorrow. Surprise inspection of their manufacturing facility, full materials testing, review of their actual production processes versus contracted specifications. Hire outside auditors. I want people with no connection to this company anywhere near this investigation. Victoria, we have 4,200 units in the field. I'm aware." She didn't look up from her phone. "Draft a recall notice. Every Pro Series 4 unit, effective immediately. We'll offer full replacement or refund, customer's choice. And I want a customer safety hotline set up by Monday morning." "That's going to cost millions," Pemberton said quietly. "Not as much as someone dying in one of our chairs." Victoria's eyes were hard. "And not as much as the lawsuits when it comes out we knew there was a problem and did nothing." She finally looked up at Ethan. "Will you consult on the recall? Help us identify which components need priority replacement? Develop inspection protocols for the repair shops?" Ethan wanted to say no. This was already way beyond anything in his experience. But he thought about the woman who'd fallen at the library. About 60 to 85 other people rolling around in defective equipment right now. "Yeah," he said, "I can do that. Same rate, plus expenses. I'll have contracts drawn up. Just write it down on something. I'm not big on formal contracts." Victoria smiled despite everything. You really aren't like most people, are you? Just a mechanic who pays attention. No, she said again. You're someone who gives a damn. That's rarer than you think. The team packed up around midnight. Ethan was left alone in his garage, surrounded by evidence of corporate negligence and human cost. He thought about his electric bill, still unpaid, about Lily's coat, about making rent. 200 an hour would solve a lot of problems. He thought about Victoria's face when he'd handed her that frayed brake cable, the fear underneath the business mask. Sometimes paying attention came with a price. He was starting to understand he'd just agreed to pay it. The coffee in Ethan's hand had gone cold 2 hours ago, but he kept drinking it anyway. Sunday morning had arrived with the kind of gray sky that promised rain but never delivered, and he'd been at the garage since 6, unable to sleep. The components from last night were still spread across the tarps, and he'd been photographing them from different angles, making notes in a spiral notebook he'd found in his desk drawer. His phone buzzed. Victoria. "You're up early," he said by way of greeting. "I haven't been to bed." Her voice sounded tired but focused. "The audit team is assembling. We're hitting Precision Mobility's facility tomorrow at 8 a.m. I want you there." Ethan set down his coffee cup. "That's not really my—" "They're going to show us paperwork and processes and swear everything's above board. I need someone who can look at what they're actually doing and call bullshit. That's you. I have a kid. Can't just drop everything. And bring her. I'll have someone from my office handle childcare for the day. Full background check, professional credentials, whatever you need to feel comfortable." Ethan pinched the bridge of his nose. Outside, a car drove past, trailing exhaust smoke. "You don't take no for an answer, do you?" "Not when people's safety is on the line. Are you in or not?" He thought about it for maybe 3 seconds. "What time should I be ready?" 6:30. I'm sending a car. I have a truck, which gets 12 miles to the gallon and sounds like it's trying to die every time you start it. The car will be there at 6:30. She hung up before he could argue further. Lily woke up confused about why they were in the apartment instead of the garage, then excited about the fancy car that was coming to pick them up, then upset because her favorite shirt was dirty. Ethan negotiated her into the second favorite shirt, made breakfast that neither of them had much appetite for, and was waiting on the curb when a black sedan pulled up at exactly 6:30. The driver was a woman in her 50s who introduced herself as Patricia and had the patient demeanor of someone who'd driven difficult passengers before. Lily was fascinated by the leather seats and the bottle of water in the cup holder and the way the windows went up and down with just a button. "Is this the princess's car?" she whispered to Ethan. "It's just a regular car, baby." "It smells like new shoes." The drive took 40 minutes, heading east out of the city into industrial areas that Ethan recognized but had never had reason to visit. Precision Mobility Solutions occupied a large warehouse complex off the highway, the kind of anonymous metal building that could have housed anything. The parking lot was already filling up with vehicles, Victoria's people arriving in formation. Victoria herself was waiting near the entrance in a different wheelchair than the one from yesterday. This one was sleeker, more aggressive somehow. She'd dressed for battle in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than Ethan's monthly rent. "Mr. Cole?" She nodded at him, then smiled at Lily. "And you must be Lily. I heard you're the one who really knows how things work." Lily hid behind Ethan's leg, suddenly shy. "She'll warm up," Ethan said. "Where do you want us?" "There's a lounge area inside where Lily can wait. Sarah will be with her. She's the one I told you about. Former elementary school teacher, current executive assistant, has 2 grandkids of her own." Victoria gestured to a woman approaching from one of the SUVs. She looked exactly like someone's grandmother, comfortable and unflappable. Sarah knelt down to Lily's level. "Hi, sweetheart. I heard you like coloring. I brought some markers and a really big pad of paper. Want to see?" Lily looked at Ethan. He nodded. "It's okay, baby. I'll be right in the other room." "You promise?" "I promise." She took Sarah's hand reluctantly, and they disappeared into the building. Ethan watched them go, fighting the instinct to follow. "She'll be fine," Victoria said. "Sarah's been with me for 8 years. I trust her with my life." "Yeah, well, Lily's more important than your life." Victoria's expression softened. "I know. Come on, we're about to ruin someone's day." The inside of the facility was exactly what Ethan expected. Vast, open floor space filled with assembly stations, pneumatic tools, parts bins, and the organized chaos of manufacturing. The place smelled like machine oil and hot metal. About 30 workers were scattered across the floor, most of them stopping to stare at the invasion of suits and tablets. A man in his late 40s came striding over, forced smile plastered on his face. He was built like someone who'd played football in college and never quite let go of it. Thick neck, broad shoulders, expensive watch that looked wrong on his wrist. "Ms. Sinclair, what a surprise. If you'd called ahead, we could have prepared a proper tour." "This isn't a tour, Derek." Victoria's voice could have frosted glass. "This is an audit." "Derek Manning? This is Ethan Cole. He'll be inspecting your production process." Derek's eyes flicked to Ethan, dismissing him in an instant. Grease under the fingernails, secondhand jacket, cheap boots. Not worth worrying about. "I'm not sure what you think you'll find," Derek said, turning back to Victoria. "We've been producing to your exact specifications for 3 years. Our quality control is second to none." "Then you won't mind us verifying that?" Victoria gestured to Pemberton, who stepped forward with a tablet. "We'll be conducting materials testing, dimensional analysis, and process review. You're required to provide full access under the terms of our contract." Derek's smile tightened. "Of course. Though I have to say, this feels somewhat adversarial. If you had concerns, we could have addressed them through normal channels." 17 defective units in 6 months isn't a concern, Derek. It's a pattern, and patterns suggest systemic problems. Victoria rolled past him toward the production floor. "Shall we?" Ethan followed, keeping his mouth shut and his eyes open. The assembly line looked professional enough at first glance. Organized stations, clear labeling, workers who seemed to know what they were doing. But details nagged at him. The materials bins weren't properly marked with batch numbers. The torque wrenches at the assembly stations looked old, possibly uncalibrated. The quality control checkpoint was staffed by one bored-looking kid who was more interested in his phone than the components passing by. "This is where we assemble the hub systems," Derek was explaining to Victoria, his tour guide voice back in place. "Each unit is built to your engineering specifications, tested for tolerance, and marked for final assembly." Ethan stopped at one of the bins, pulled out a hub assembly blank, ran his thumb over the surface. The metal felt wrong, too soft. "What's the alloy spec for these?" he asked. Derek frowned, not used to being interrupted by the help. 7075-T6 aluminum, per contract. "You have the material certifications?" "Of course, we maintain full documentation. Can I see them?" A flicker of annoyance crossed Derek's face. "They're in the office. I can have someone pull them." Now would be good. Victoria was watching this exchange with interest. Derek pulled out his phone, made a call, spoke in low tones. "They'll bring them," he said shortly. Ethan set down the blank and moved to the next station, where a worker was installing brake cable housings. The process looked right, proper crimping, correct tension testing. But when Ethan picked up one of the finished assemblies and examined the cable itself, he could see the same flaws he'd identified last night. Inconsistent weave, weak points in the stranding. "Where do you source the cables?" he asked the worker directly. The guy looked nervous, glancing at Derek. They come in those bins over there, pre-cut to length." "From which supplier?" I just install them, man." Derek stepped in. "Our suppliers are proprietary information. Unless you have authorization to review procurement records." "I have authorization to review anything that affects product safety," Victoria said quietly. "Which suppliers, Derek?" "Multiple sources. We bid out components quarterly to ensure competitive pricing." "Names." Derek's jaw worked. "I'd need to check with procurement." "Then check." The material certifications arrived carried by a harried-looking woman in her 20s. She handed Derek a folder, avoided eye contact with everyone else, and fled. Derek opened it, pulled out sheets of paper covered in technical specifications and certification stamps. "As you can see," he said, handing them to Victoria, "everything is properly documented." Ethan took the papers when Victoria passed them over. They looked official, typed forms, stamped signatures, batch numbers that corresponded to current production. The alloy specification listed 7075-T6. The tensile strength numbers were exactly what they should be. "These are fake," Ethan said. The room went very quiet. "Excuse me?" Derek's voice had gone dangerous. Ethan held up the certification sheet. "Look at the batch number. It's formatted wrong. Real mill certifications use a different numbering system, alphanumeric with the mill code embedded. This is just sequential numbers, and the signature stamp is wrong too. See how it's perfectly aligned? Real stamps are hand-applied. They're never this precise. He grabbed the hub blank he'd examined earlier. More importantly, this material doesn't match these specs. This isn't 7075. It's too soft. The surface finish is wrong, and if you put a hardness tester to it, I guarantee you'll get readings consistent with 6061 or maybe even 6063. That's absurd, Derek said, but his voice had lost some of its certainty. We source directly from certified mills. You source from someone who's selling you cheap material and faking the paperwork. Ethan looked at Victoria. You'll need metallurgical testing to prove it conclusively, but I'd bet my garage this blank isn't what the certification claims. Victoria nodded to Pemberton. Get samples. I want independent lab analysis by end of business tomorrow. Now wait just a minute, Derek said. You can't just come in here making accusations. I can do whatever my contract allows, and right now my contract allows me to audit every aspect of your production. Victoria's eyes were cold. Here's what's going to happen. My team is going to test everything: materials, dimensions, processes, documentation. You're going to provide full cooperation, and if we find that you've been falsifying certifications and substituting substandard materials, I will personally ensure you never work in this industry again. You're overreacting to a few customer complaints. A woman fell out of one of your chairs and broke her arm. She's 34 years old, Derek. She has 2 kids. She trusted that the wheelchair we sold her would work because we trusted that you were building it correctly. So no, I'm not overreacting. I'm finally reacting appropriately. Derek's face had gone red. I've been building mobility equipment for 20 years. I don't need some... He caught himself, but Ethan heard the word he didn't say. I don't need some mechanic telling me how to do my job. That mechanic spotted problems in 10 minutes that your entire operation missed for 6 months, Victoria said. So maybe you do need him. Ethan, keep looking. Tell me everything you find. For the next 4 hours, Ethan moved through the facility like a detective at a crime scene. He found mismatched torque settings on the pneumatic tools, uncalibrated measurement equipment, parts bins with components from different batches mixed together, quality control checkpoints that were logging inspections at a rate that made thorough testing impossible. Either they were rushing or they weren't testing at all. The workers, once they realized Ethan wasn't management, started talking. Quietly at first, then more openly when they saw Derek wasn't around. They changed suppliers about 8 months ago, one assembler told him, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and careful hands. Started getting different materials. Looked the same but didn't feel right, you know? I mentioned it to my supervisor. Got told to worry about my own station. The quality control logs, another worker said, younger guy with an engineering degree he'd mentioned twice. They're entered at the end of shift, not during production. Batch entries. No way the numbers are real. Derek's been pushing speed over quality, a third added. Bonus structure changed. We get paid extra for hitting production targets, nothing for catching defects. You do the math. Ethan did the math. It added up to exactly what he'd suspected, a systematic plan to cut costs and increase margins by compromising quality and hoping no one noticed. He found Victoria in what passed for the facility's conference room, surrounded by Pemberton and 3 other executives. They were reviewing data on tablets, voices low and serious. The preliminary materials testing confirms your assessment, Victoria said when she saw him. The hub blanks are 6061, not 7075. The brake cables are commercial grade, not precision spec. The bearing tolerances are out of spec on 60% of the samples we pulled. There's more, Ethan said. He explained about the quality control logs, the changed bonus structure, the worker complaints that got ignored. Victoria's expression didn't change, but something in her eyes went hard. Get Derek in here. Derek arrived 5 minutes later, defensive and angry. I hope you're prepared to compensate us for the production time you've cost today. Sit down, Derek. Something in Victoria's voice made him comply. We have metallurgical evidence that you've been using substandard materials, she said. We have documentation showing your quality control processes are falsified. We have worker testimony about management pressure to ignore defects. Would you like to explain any of this before I turn it over to our legal department? Derek sat very still. You don't understand the economics of manufacturing. Your price points are aggressive. You want premium quality at commodity prices. Something has to give, so you decided to lie about it rather than renegotiate the contract. I decided to stay competitive. If I'd come to you asking for higher prices, you would have found another supplier. Everyone does this. It's how the industry works. Not with my company, Victoria said quietly. Not with products that people's lives depend on. People's lives. Derek laughed, but it sounded hollow. It's wheelchairs, Victoria. Mobility equipment, not pacemakers, not aircraft components. The tolerances don't need to be that tight. Tell that to the woman who fell at the library. Ethan's voice came out harder than he intended. Tell that to the next person who breaks down in the middle of nowhere because you saved $40 a unit on materials. Tell that to someone who rolls into traffic because your cut-rate brake cable snapped. Derek's eyes flicked to him. What do you know about manufacturing economics? You're just a grease monkey who got lucky spotting a few flaws. I know enough to understand that cheap and defective aren't the same thing. You could have come to Victoria, explained the pricing pressure, worked out a solution. Instead, you decided to pocket the difference and hope nobody died. It's business, Derek said. Adults making adult decisions about acceptable risk versus... It's fraud, Victoria interrupted. And as of right now, Precision Mobility Solutions is terminated as a supplier. You have 72 hours to provide documentation of every component you've manufactured for us, every material substitution you've made, and every falsified certification you've provided. After that, our lawyers will be in touch. Derek stood up fast enough to knock his chair backwards. You can't do this. We have contracts, obligations, which you violated the moment you falsified your first material cert. Get out of my facility. Your facility? This is my company, which is located in a building you lease from one of my subsidiary holdings. Didn't realize that, did you? The lease has a termination clause for breach of quality standards. You have 30 days to vacate. Victoria's voice stayed level, almost pleasant. I suggest you use that time to find a very good lawyer. Derek looked like he wanted to say more, looked like he might flip the table. Instead, he turned and walked out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Silence filled the conference room. Well, Pemberton said finally, that went about as expected. Victoria rubbed her temples. What's the damage assessment? 4,200 units in the field, all potentially affected. Estimated recall cost including replacement, refunds, and customer service overhead is between 8 and 12 million. Potential liability from the library incident and any other unreported injuries could add another 5 to 20 million depending on settlements. And we need to find a new manufacturer capable of producing at volume within... He checked his tablet. 6 months, or we're looking at major delivery delays on existing orders. What about criminal charges? Victoria asked. Against Derek personally? Possible. Fraud, reckless endangerment, maybe corporate negligence. The DA would have to decide if it's worth prosecuting. Victoria looked at Ethan. You were right. People do walk past stuck all the time. I've been walking past this for 6 months, trusting the wrong people to tell me the truth. You didn't know, Ethan said. I should have. It's my company, my name on the product, my responsibility. She stood up. The wheelchair could elevate, Ethan realized, and addressed the room. Here's what we're doing. Full recall, no exceptions. Every customer gets contacted personally, not with a form letter. We eat the cost, all of it. No trying to split liability with Derek or the insurance company. This is on us. Victoria, the board, Pemberton started. The board can vote me out if they don't like it. But I'm not going to stand in front of customers or shareholders or anyone else and explain why we chose profits over safety. We fix this right, we fix it completely, and we never let it happen again. She looked exhausted suddenly, smaller somehow, despite the elevated wheelchair. I need air, she said. Ethan, walk with me. They left through a side door that opened onto a loading area. The November wind had picked up, carrying the smell of rain that still wasn't falling. Victoria lowered her chair back to normal height, rolled to the edge of the concrete pad. My father built this company, she said after a moment. Started in his garage just like you. Took it from one-man custom builds to mass production in 20 years. When he died, I inherited everything. The company, the reputation, the responsibility. How long ago? 3 years? I was 27. Everyone said I was too young, too inexperienced. So I worked twice as hard as anyone else to prove them wrong, pushed for growth, efficiency, market share. And I missed this. Missed the fact that someone was cutting corners because I was too focused on the numbers to look at the actual product. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. He understood the pressure of living up to expectations, but not on that scale. Not with billions on the line. My dad would have caught it, Victoria continued. He always said you can't understand what you're building unless you're willing to get your hands dirty. But I've never built a wheelchair. I've designed them, engineered them, marketed them, never actually assembled one from parts. Not too late to start. She smiled slightly. No, I suppose not. She turned to look at him. Why didn't you take the money I offered? In the park. You could have named any price and I would have paid it, because that's not why I helped. Most people would have. Most people see someone like me and see a walking, she caught herself, a rolling ATM. But you didn't. Why? Ethan thought about it. About Amanda leaving because he'd rather fix cars than chase promotions. About choosing time with Lily over extra shifts. About all the ways he'd prioritize being a decent person over being a successful one. I don't know, he said honestly. Maybe because I've been stuck before. Maybe because my kid was watching and I wanted her to see someone help. Maybe I'm just wired wrong for this world. You're not wired wrong. The world is. Victoria pulled out her phone, checked something, put it away. I want to offer you a job. I have a job. You have a failing garage with unpaid bills and equipment held together with hope. I checked. Don't look at me like that. Of course I checked. You think I was going to bring a stranger into a corporate investigation without background research? Ethan felt his face heat. That's invasive. It's thorough. There's a difference. She rolled closer. I'm offering you a position as Director of Quality Assurance. You'd oversee manufacturing compliance, product safety, customer issue resolution, salary of $160,000 plus benefits, company car, healthcare that actually works, education fund for Lily. The numbers were so far outside Ethan's reality that they didn't quite register. I'm not qualified for that. You're the only person who was qualified to spot problems that stumped my entire engineering department. I'd say that makes you perfectly qualified. I don't have a degree. I barely finished community college before I had to start working full-time. I don't care about degrees, I care about competence and integrity and giving a damn when things are wrong. Victoria's eyes were intense. You could have walked past me in that park. Could have taken my money and disappeared. Could have looked at these components last night and told me what I wanted to hear instead of what I needed to hear. But you didn't. That's worth more than any degree. Ethan looked back at the warehouse, thinking about Derek and the shortcuts and the woman who'd fallen at the library. You need someone from the industry, someone who knows manufacturing, supply chains, corporate politics. I have people who know all that. They're the ones who missed this disaster. I need someone who thinks differently, who looks at a problem and sees it clearly instead of through layers of bureaucracy and profit margins. I don't know how to be a corporate executive. Neither did I when I inherited this company. We'll figure it out together. She held out her hand. Say yes. Ethan looked at her hand, thought about his garage and his bills and Lily's too small coat, thought about all the ways this could go wrong. He was a mechanic. He fixed things with his hands, not policies and procedures. But maybe that was exactly what Victoria needed. I can't give you an answer right now, he said. I need to think about it. Talk to Lily. This would change everything for us. Victoria nodded. Fair enough, take the week. But Ethan, whether you take the job or not, I'm still going to need your help with the recall. We have 4,200 wheelchairs to inspect and millions of dollars in liability riding on getting this right. I'll pay consulting rates, no strings attached. The $200 an hour, plus expenses and a completion bonus. You're looking at somewhere between $80,000 and $100,000 for the full project, 3 to 4 months' work. Ethan's brain couldn't quite process that number. That's more than I make in a year. Then maybe that tells you something about what your skills are actually worth. They went back inside. Sarah had Lily in the lounge, and they'd apparently become best friends. Lily had drawn what appeared to be a very detailed picture of a dragon fighting a spaceship. Daddy, look what I made. Sarah said it's really good. It's amazing, baby. Ethan examined the drawing, seeing the careful way she'd colored inside the lines, the story she was building across the page. Can we come back tomorrow? Sarah said she might bring cookies. We'll see. On the drive back, Lily fell asleep in the car, dragon picture clutched in her hand. Ethan watched the city roll past, mind spinning through possibilities and consequences. $160,000. Healthcare. Education fund. Everything he'd been struggling to provide suddenly within reach. But it meant leaving the garage. Leaving the work he knew. Stepping into a world where he'd be surrounded by people like Derek, people who saw him as the grease monkey who got lucky. His phone buzzed. A text from Victoria. Whatever you decide, thank you. You saved lives this weekend. That matters more than you know. Ethan looked at Lily sleeping beside him, small and perfect, and trusting that he'd figure out how to give her the life she deserved. Maybe it was time to stop walking past his own stuck. Monday morning arrived with the electric bill still unpaid, and Ethan standing in his garage staring at a decision he'd been avoiding all night. The Henderson van sat where he'd left it, transmission torn apart, parts scattered across his workbench. He'd promised them the repair by Wednesday. That timeline assumed he'd be here working on it. His phone had been buzzing since 6 a.m. Victoria's team sending documentation, contracts, inspection schedules. The recall was already in motion. Press release went out at midnight. Customer hotline staffed and live by 7. The machine was moving with or without him. He picked up a transmission gear, turned it over in his hands. The teeth were worn smooth on one side, metal fatigue visible even to the naked eye. Mrs. Henderson had driven on this for months, probably ignoring the grinding sounds, hoping it would hold together just a little longer. He understood that kind of hope intimately. The front door chimed. Ethan looked up to see a man in an expensive suit standing in his garage like he'd wandered into the wrong movie. Late 30s, perfectly styled hair, briefcase that probably cost more than the Henderson van was worth. Ethan Cole? That's me. Marcus Chen, legal counsel for Sync Motion Technologies. Ms. Sinclair asked me to drop these off personally. He set the briefcase on Ethan's cluttered desk, popped it open, pulled out a thick folder. Consulting contract for the recall project. Standard terms, payment schedule, liability protections. Ms. Sinclair noted you prefer simple documentation. Ethan took the folder. It was maybe 5 pages total, written in something approaching normal English instead of legal gibberish. She also asked me to clarify that signing this doesn't obligate you to accept the employment offer. Marcus continued. Those are separate decisions. The recall work is project-based, finite scope. The director position would be permanent employment. She always this thorough? She's been up for 36 hours running worst-case scenarios and damage control. Thorough is her baseline. Right now, she's operating at what I'd call obsessive. Marcus pulled out a pen, clicked it, set it on top of the folder. Read through everything. Sign where indicated if you're comfortable with the terms. My number's on the card if you have questions. Payment is bi-weekly. First installment processes once you submit your initial inspection reports. He left as efficiently as he'd arrived. Ethan read through the contract twice, looking for traps or fine print that would come back to bite him. But it was exactly what Victoria had promised. $80,000 for 3 to 4 months' work, consultancy status, termination clause that ran both ways. He could walk at any point, so could she. He signed it before he could talk himself out of it. The rest of Monday disappeared into logistics. Victoria's team needed detailed inspection protocols, what to check, how to document findings, criteria for replacement versus repair. Ethan wrote it all out longhand in his notebook first, then typed it up on the ancient desktop computer in his office, the one with keys that stuck and a fan that sounded like a dying helicopter. By Tuesday morning, he had 47 missed calls and a problem. Mrs. Henderson needed her van. The Martinez family needed their sedan. Old Mr. Peterson's truck was blocking half the garage bay, and he'd been calling daily asking when it would be ready. Ethan had existing obligations and no way to fulfill them while working on Victoria's recall. He was staring at this equation when his phone rang. Victoria, naturally. I can't be in 2 places at once, he said instead of hello. Good morning to you too. What's wrong? I have customers, people who trusted me to fix their vehicles. I can't just abandon them for 4 months. Silence on the other end, then, what if you didn't have to? I'm listening. How much would it cost to hire another mechanic? Someone who could handle your existing workload while you focus on the recall? Ethan laughed. It came out more bitter than he intended. Good mechanics don't come cheap. And I can't afford cheap ones because they'll wreck my reputation. That's not what I asked. Give me a number. He did the math in his head. Decent mechanic, full-time, benefits he couldn't actually afford to offer. 45 to 50,000 a year. Maybe more depending on experience. Done. Hire someone. SyncMotion will cover their salary for the duration of the recall project. After that, you can keep them on or not depending on your business needs. You can't just, I can and I am. You're worried about abandoning your customers. I'm giving you a way not to, unless you have a better solution. Ethan didn't. This is crazy. This is pragmatic. You need help. I need you focused on the recall. Everyone wins. Her voice softened slightly. And Ethan? Those customers who are waiting? They're trusting you the same way my customers trusted me. I understand not wanting to let people down. He hung up and sat there for a long moment, trying to figure out when his life had jumped tracks into whatever alternate universe this was. Last week he'd been one missed payment from losing everything. Now a billionaire was offering to bankroll his garage. The job posting went up that afternoon. Experienced mechanic wanted, immediate start, competitive salary. He got 12 applications by Wednesday morning and interviewed 3 candidates who didn't make him want to set his own garage on fire. The 4th interview was a woman named Rosa Martinez, 52 years old, 28 years of experience, recently laid off when the dealership she'd worked at consolidated locations. "Why'd you stay so long?" Ethan asked, watching her examine his tools with the careful attention of someone who respected equipment. "It was close to home, paid decent. Let me pick up my kids from school." She set down the torque wrench she'd been inspecting. "Then my kids graduated and the new management decided experience meant expensive. You know how it goes." He did. "This job won't be glamorous. Small garage, limited equipment, customers who can barely afford the repairs they need. Sounds like every place I've ever worked." Rosa looked around the garage with an expression Ethan recognized. "You take care of this space. That matters." He hired her on the spot. By Thursday, Ethan was standing in a conference room on the 15th floor of SyncMotion's downtown headquarters, surrounded by people in business attire who kept using words like synergy and optimization while he tried not to spill coffee on paperwork that probably cost more to print than his monthly grocery budget. Victoria ran the meeting with the precision of a general planning a campaign. Department heads reported numbers: recall response rate, customer service call volume, media inquiries, preliminary cost projections. Every few minutes, someone would ask Ethan a technical question, and the room would go quiet while he explained things in language they clearly weren't used to hearing. "The hub failures correlate with user weight over 120, he said, pointing to the data chart someone had made from his notes. "But it's not the weight itself causing the problem. It's the load cycling. Heavier users generate more stress per rotation, which accelerates the fatigue fracture. These hubs were designed for 7075 aluminum at specific load ratings. Drop down to 6061 and your safety margin disappears. Can we retrofit the existing hubs?" someone asked. Engineering department based on the lanyard. "Not safely. The mounting points are compromised once the crack initiates. You'd need to replace the entire hub assembly and probably inspect the frame connection points for stress damage." "That's expensive." "Not as expensive as a lawsuit when someone gets hurt." Ethan looked at Victoria. "You wanted me to call it straight." "That's me calling it straight." She nodded. "Full hub replacement on all units. Add it to the recall scope." The meeting dragged on for 2 more hours. Ethan's back started hurting from the conference room chairs that looked comfortable but weren't. He missed his garage, his workbench, the simple clarity of broken things that needed fixing. Afterward, Victoria caught him in the hallway. "You looked miserable in there." "I don't speak corporate. Feels like everyone's talking around what they actually mean." "That's because they are. Corporate culture rewards not saying things directly." She rolled alongside him toward the elevators. "It's exhausting. I've been doing it for 3 years and I still want to scream sometimes." "Then why do it?" "Because changing it from the inside is harder than tolerating it. Pick your battles, right?" She pressed the elevator button, waited. "There's someone I want you to meet. He's downstairs in the prototype lab." The lab was everything Ethan's garage wasn't. Clean, organized, filled with expensive equipment and bright lighting that didn't flicker. A man in his 60s stood at a workbench, assembling what looked like a wheelchair frame from raw components. He wore cargo pants and a faded band t-shirt, completely out of place among the corporate sterility. "James," Victoria called. "Got a minute?" The man looked up, saw Victoria, smiled. "For you? Always. Though I should warn you, the new suspension geometry is fighting me." "James Reeves, meet Ethan Cole. Ethan, this is James. He designed about 70% of our product line, including the Pro Series 4. James wiped his hands on a rag, came over. His handshake was firm, calloused, working hands. "You're the mechanic who found the defects. Just got lucky." Luck is being prepared to notice what everyone else misses. James leaned against the workbench. "I've been reviewing your inspection notes. You see things I didn't catch in the design phase. That's humbling." "The design wasn't the problem," Ethan said. "The manufacturing was. The design should have been robust enough to survive manufacturing variants. That's on me." James picked up one of the defective hubs from a nearby table. "I spec'd 7075 aluminum because the tolerances were tight. Should have built in more safety margin. Assumed someone would cut corners." "You can't design for malicious compliance," Victoria said. "Maybe not, but I can design better going forward." James looked at Ethan. "Victoria says you might be joining us permanently. I hope you do. We need people who think like you." "I think like a mechanic." "Exactly. Engineers get lost in the math sometimes. Forget there's a real person using the product, trusting it to work when they need it most." He set down the hub. "You don't forget that. It's in your notes. Every observation is framed around user impact." Ethan hadn't thought about it that way, but James was right. He'd been imagining real people the whole time. Someone trying to get to work, someone trying to navigate a grocery store, someone like Victoria stuck in a park because their equipment failed. They spent an hour going through the prototype designs for the next generation. James asked questions that actually made sense, listened to Ethan's answers without the usual corporate filter. By the time they left, Ethan's head was spinning with ideas about stress distribution and component redundancy and fail-safe mechanisms. "He's good," Ethan told Victoria in the elevator. "He's the best. Also completely unmanageable by normal corporate standards. Shows up when he wants, works on what interests him, tells executives their ideas are stupid directly to their faces." She smiled. "My father hired him 30 years ago. Only person in the company who doesn't treat me differently because I'm the boss." "Sounds like a good person to keep around." "That's what I keep telling the board. They want me to retire him. I keep refusing." The elevator opened onto the executive floor. Victoria's office was at the end of the hall, behind glass walls that probably cost more than Ethan's truck. Inside was exactly what he expected. Expensive furniture, city views, awards, and press coverage framed on the walls. Also unexpected, a corner filled with wheelchair parts, tools scattered across a workbench, grease stains on the expensive carpet. "You're building something," Ethan said. "Trying to. James suggested I assemble a Pro Series 4 from scratch. Said I couldn't understand what went wrong if I didn't understand how it should go right." She rolled to the workbench, picked up a partially assembled frame. "I'm terrible at it. Keep mixing up components, stripping screws, reading the diagrams backward." "Most people are terrible at it the first time." "How long did it take you?" Ethan thought back. "To learn mechanical assembly? Years. But I was 16 and working in my uncle's shop after school. Different circumstances." Victoria set down the frame, looked at her hands. Grease under the fingernails now, just like Ethan's. "Can I ask you something, off the record?" "Sure." "Why'd you really stop in the park?" "The truth, not the noble answer you gave me." Ethan leaned against the door frame, considering. "You want the real truth? I stopped because my daughter was watching. And I've spent 6 years teaching her to be kind, be helpful, do the right thing even when it's inconvenient. Seemed pretty hypocritical to walk past someone who needed help while I'm lecturing her about being a good person." Victoria laughed, but it sounded tired. "So you helped me to set a good example for Lily." "Partially, also because I know what it's like to be stuck and have people pretend not to see you. My ex-wife left 3 years ago. Those first few months I asked for help a lot. From friends, family, people I thought I could count on. Most of them found reasons to be busy." He shrugged. "Eventually you learn to stop asking, but you don't forget what it felt like." "No," Victoria said quietly, "you don't." Friday brought the first wave of actual recall work. A warehouse on the south side had been converted into an inspection facility, staffed with technicians Victoria had hired and Ethan had trained over 2 brutal 14-hour days. Wheelchairs started arriving by the truckload, customers shipping them back, repair shops dropping off units, SyncMotion's own inventory getting pulled for inspection. Ethan moved between stations, checking work, answering questions, catching mistakes before they became bigger problems. A hub assembly installed backward here, a brake cable routed incorrectly there. The technicians were competent but new to this specific equipment. He understood. Everything was new until you'd done it enough times to make it automatic. By noon, they'd processed 63 units, found 41 with defects serious enough to warrant full replacement. The numbers were worse than Victoria's worst-case projections. She arrived around 2, rolling through the warehouse with Pemberton trailing behind taking notes. Ethan saw her face when she looked at the growing pile of defective components. Saw the guilt there, the weight of knowing this happened on her watch. "It's not your fault," he said when she reached his station. "Feels like it should be. You didn't install the wrong materials. You didn't falsify the certifications. You trusted someone who violated that trust. That's on them, not you." "I should have caught it sooner." "Maybe. Or maybe you're human, and humans miss things sometimes." Ethan picked up a defective hub, showed her the fracture pattern. "You're fixing it now. That's what matters." Most companies would have fought the recall, buried the evidence, paid off complainants to stay quiet. You're doing the opposite. Victoria took the hub, examined it closely. "My father always said the measure of a company isn't how many mistakes it makes. It's how it handles them when they happen. I just wish I was handling this better." "You're doing fine." "I threatened to fire 3 people this morning because they suggested we limit the recall scope to reduce costs." "Sounds like they deserved it." She smiled despite herself. "You're supposed to tell me I'm being too harsh. I'm supposed to tell you the truth. Truth is, anyone who suggests compromising safety to save money shouldn't be making decisions about safety." They worked side by side for the next hour, Victoria learning the inspection process, Ethan teaching her the same way he'd taught the technicians. She was quick, caught on to the diagnostic patterns faster than he expected. When she found her first defect, a brake cable with internal stress fractures, she looked genuinely proud. "Is this weird?" she asked, holding up the damaged cable. "That I'm enjoying this?" "Enjoying what?" "Actually doing the work, getting my hands dirty, understanding how things fit together." She set down the cable carefully. "I've spent 3 years in boardrooms and conference calls. This feels more real." "It is more real. Spreadsheets don't tell you what broken things sound like. Reports don't show you how materials fail. You have to touch it, examine it, figure it out." "Is that why you never left your garage, even when you were struggling?" Ethan thought about it. "Partially, also because I'm not good at anything else. Can't sell, can't manage, can't play corporate politics. I can fix things. That's my skill set." "You're managing right now. Training technicians, overseeing quality control, coordinating with multiple departments. That's management." "That's just paying attention and telling people what needs doing." "Ethan, that's literally the definition of management." He didn't have a good answer for that. Saturday brought complications. One of the recalled wheelchairs had been in a minor accident. User claimed the brake failure caused them to roll into a parked car, causing property damage and minor injuries. Victoria's legal team was already involved, but they needed Ethan's technical assessment to understand whether the brake defect could have contributed. The wheelchair arrived at the warehouse looking worse than most. Impact damage on the left side, brake assembly torn completely apart. Ethan spent 2 hours documenting everything, photographing from multiple angles, testing what remained of the brake system. The cable had snapped, but determining whether it snapped before or after the impact was tricky. He took samples, sent them for analysis, wrote up his preliminary findings in language careful enough to avoid promising conclusions he couldn't support. "Well," Victoria asked when he finished, "cable shows the same internal defects as other failed units, stress fractures consistent with substandard materials, but I can't definitively say it failed before the impact. Could have been weakened and the collision finished it off. What's your professional opinion?" "Off the record?" "Yeah, the brake probably failed first. The fracture pattern suggests tensile failure, not impact shear, but a lawyer could argue it either way depending on what expert they hire." Victoria nodded slowly. "Settlement offer?" "That's your call, not mine." "I'm asking your opinion. What would you do?" Ethan looked at the damaged wheelchair, Thought about the person who'd been using it, someone who trusted the equipment enough to rely on it every day. I'd settle, pay for the car repairs, medical expenses, maybe some additional compensation for pain and suffering. And I'd do it quietly, without forcing them to prove anything in court. That sets a precedent. Every claim after this will expect the same treatment. Good, they should. If our defects caused harm, we should make it right without making people jump through legal hoops to get justice. Victoria pulled out her phone, typed something, sent it. Done. Legal is drafting the settlement offer now. Just like that? Just like that. You were right in Derek's warehouse. I care more about people than money. Time to prove it. They broke for dinner around 8. Victoria ordered food for the entire warehouse crew. Pizza, sandwiches, actual decent stuff instead of cheap bulk catering. The technicians were surprised. Apparently the previous management hadn't exactly been generous with meal provisions. Ethan found himself sitting on a loading dock with Victoria, eating pizza that had gone slightly cold, watching the sun set over industrial buildings that all looked the same. Can I ask you something? Victoria said. About the job offer. I still haven't decided. I know, but I'm curious what's holding you back. The salary is good, the benefits are better, you'd have resources and support you've never had access to. What's the downside? Ethan finished his pizza, wiped grease on his jeans. The downside is I stopped being who I am. Right now I'm a mechanic who helps people fix their cars. Simple transaction, honest work, direct impact. Take your job and I become, what? A corporate executive managing other people? How many steps removed from actually helping anyone? You'd be helping ensure product safety for thousands of users. By going to meetings and reviewing reports. That's not the same as fixing someone's transmission so they can get to work. Victoria was quiet for a moment. What if I told you the job could be whatever you make it? James spends half his time in the prototype lab building things. You could spend half your time doing actual inspections, working with manufacturers, hands-on quality control. The title is director. The job description is flexible. Is it? Or are you telling me what I want to hear? Probably both. She smiled slightly. I need you, Ethan. Not because you're a good mechanic, though you are, because you see things clearly. Don't get lost in corporate bullshit. Care about the right things for the right reasons. That's rare in my world. Rare enough that I'm willing to let you write your own job description if it means you'll stay. Why does it matter so much? You've got a whole company full of smart people. Smart people who missed a 6-month defect pattern because they were too focused on hitting targets and managing optics. You found it in 10 minutes because you were focused on whether the product worked. She looked at him directly. I don't need more smart people, Ethan. I need people who give a damn. Before he could respond, his phone rang. Mrs. Chen. He answered immediately, worry spiking. Ethan, sorry to bother you. Lily's fine, but she's asking for you. Says her stomach hurts and she wants her daddy. I'm on my way. 20 minutes. He stood, already moving. Victoria called after him. Everything okay? Lily's sick. I need to go. Go. We've got this covered. The drive home took 17 minutes because Ethan ignored several traffic laws. He found Lily curled up on Mrs. Chen's couch, pale and miserable. No fever, just a stomachache that had her in tears. Hey, baby, he said, scooping her up. I got you. She buried her face in his shoulder. It hurts, Daddy. I know, let's get you home. Mrs. Chen had that worried grandmother look. She ate dinner fine, then about an hour ago said her tummy felt bad. I gave her some water, but she wouldn't drink it. It's okay. Thank you for calling. Ethan carried Lily upstairs to their apartment, got her into bed, sat with her until the stomach pain eased enough for her to fall asleep. He stayed there watching her breathe, thinking about Victoria's offer and corporate jobs and all the ways his life was changing, whether he wanted it to or not. Lily stirred in her sleep, reached for his hand without waking. Her fingers were so small in his. Whatever he decided about the job, about the future, about any of it, this was what mattered. Making sure she was okay. Being there when she needed him. Everything else was just details. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. Hope Lily's okay. Take tomorrow off. Sunday's for family. He texted back, thanks. She's better, just a scared kid who wanted her dad. Best reason in the world. See you Monday. Ethan set down the phone, closed his eyes, and tried to imagine what Monday would look like. The warehouse, the inspections, the steady paycheck that could change everything for him and Lily. The corporate world he didn't understand but might be able to navigate if someone like Victoria had his back. Or he could walk away, keep his garage, his independence, his simple life that was hard but honest. Both options felt like jumping off a cliff. He just wasn't sure which one had water at the bottom and which one had rocks. Monday morning came too early. Lily was better, but clingy, refusing to let Ethan leave until he'd read her 3 stories and promised to be home for dinner. Rosa had started at the garage and was already proving her worth. She'd texted him photos of the Henderson van's completed transmission rebuild with a note that said, "Found 2 more problems you missed. Fix those too." Ethan arrived at the warehouse to find chaos. The inspection facility had processed over 300 units over the weekend, and the defect rate was climbing. 68% now. Worse, they'd discovered a new failure pattern, frame welds that looked solid but had microscopic fractures spreading from the heat-affected zones. "This is bad," one of the senior technicians told Ethan, showing him the X-ray imaging they'd done. "These welds could fail catastrophically. We're talking complete structural collapse." Ethan examined the images, his stomach sinking. "How many units have you found this in?" 47 so far, all from the same production batch, assembled between March and May. "Get Victoria on the phone. Now." She arrived within 30 minutes, Pemberton and 2 other executives in tow. Ethan showed her the X-rays without preamble. "These frames are ticking time bombs," he said. "The welds look fine on visual inspection, but the internal structure is compromised. Under load, under stress, they could separate completely." Victoria's face went pale. "How many units in that production batch?" Pemberton checked his tablet. "Approximately 870 units shipped to customers. Another 200 in warehouse inventory. Contact every single customer who received a unit from those batches. Priority recall, immediate replacement. I don't care if they haven't experienced problems. I want those chairs out of circulation today. Victoria, we can't physically replace 800 units in one day." Audit. "What? Then we offer loaner chairs, hotel accommodations if needed. Whatever it takes to ensure no one is using potentially dangerous equipment. Make it happen." The executives scattered. Victoria stayed, staring at the X-ray images like they'd personally betrayed her. "How did Derek think he'd get away with this?" she asked quietly. "He probably didn't think about it at all. Just saw an opportunity to cut costs and took it. Bad welds are harder to spot than wrong materials. He was counting on visual inspections missing what X-rays would catch. We should have X-rayed everything from the beginning. You didn't know you needed to. Now you do." Ethan set down the images. "That's how you learn in this business. Something breaks, you figure out why, you prevent it from happening again. I'm tired of learning lessons that cost people their safety. Then stop beating yourself up and focus on fixing it. Self-flagellation doesn't help anyone." Victoria looked at him sharply, then laughed despite everything. "You don't pull punches, do you? You said you wanted someone who'd tell you the truth. Truth is, you're doing everything right now. The recall, the inspections, the priority replacements. Feeling guilty about it doesn't make it better. Just makes you tired. Speaking from experience? Every single day since my ex-wife left. Spent months blaming myself for not being ambitious enough, successful enough, whatever enough. Didn't change anything, just made me miserable." He shrugged. "Eventually I figured out that guilt is useless unless it motivates you to do better. Sounds like you're already doing better." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Thank you. I needed to hear that." The priority recall turned into a logistical nightmare. 870 customers scattered across 6 states, all needing immediate contact and replacement units that didn't exist yet because the new manufacturer Victoria had contracted wasn't up to full production. The solution ended up being a combination of loaner chairs from rental companies, expedited shipping of warehouse inventory that had passed inspection, and in some cases, SyncMotion employees personally delivering replacements. Ethan found himself driving a company van to 3 different cities over 2 days, delivering wheelchairs and inspecting the defective units customers were returning. It was exhausting and inefficient, and exactly the kind of hands-on problem-solving he understood. The 3rd delivery was to a woman named Patricia Summers, 46 years old, living in a 2-story house that clearly wasn't designed for wheelchair accessibility. She answered the door with obvious relief. "Thank God," she said. "I've been stuck upstairs for 2 days. My daughter's been helping, but she has work, school. This has been a nightmare. Ethan brought in the replacement chair, helped her transfer, spent 20 minutes making sure everything was adjusted correctly. The old chair showed the telltale signs of frame stress, slight warping near the welds, hairline cracks visible under close inspection. "You're lucky," he told her. "Another few weeks and this could have failed while you were using it." Patricia touched the damaged frame, her hand trembling slightly. "I trusted this thing with my life, every single day, going down ramps, crossing streets. It never occurred to me it might just collapse." "It shouldn't have occurred to you. That's not something customers should have to worry about. Is it true what they're saying, that the company knew there were problems and didn't say anything?" Ethan chose his words carefully. "The company's owner found out about the problems and immediately started the recall. She's the one who insisted on replacing every potentially defective unit, even ones that haven't shown issues yet. That must be costing a fortune." "Probably, but she decided people's safety was worth more than the money." Patricia nodded slowly. "Tell her thank you, from me, for caring enough to do the right thing even when it's expensive." Ethan drove back thinking about that conversation, about trust and responsibility and the invisible contract between makers and users. By the time he reached the warehouse, it was almost midnight, and he was running on coffee and stubborn determination. Victoria was still there, working through inspection reports at a makeshift desk someone had set up in the corner. She looked as tired as Ethan felt. "You should go home," he said. "So should you, yet here we are." "I had deliveries." "What's your excuse?" "Same excuse as always. If I'm not here working, I'm at home not sleeping and worrying about work. At least here I can be productive." Ethan pulled up a chair, sat down uninvited. "You're going to burn out, probably. Add it to the list of things I'm doing wrong." "I didn't say you were doing it wrong. Just said you're going to burn out. There's a difference." Victoria set down the report she'd been reading. "Did the deliveries go okay?" "Yeah, last customer asked me to thank you, said she appreciated you caring enough to do the right thing even when it's expensive." "I'm just doing what anyone would do." "No, you're doing what anyone should do. Most people wouldn't." He thought about Derek, about all the companies he'd seen cut corners over the years. Most people would have fought this, minimized the scope, blamed the contractor, settled the lawsuits quietly, and moved on. You didn't. Because that would be wrong. Yeah. But wrong is often profitable. You chose right instead. That matters. Victoria looked at him for a long moment. "You still haven't given me an answer. About the job." "I know. It's been 2 weeks. I need to know whether to keep looking for candidates or wait for you to decide." Ethan had been avoiding this conversation, but she was right. He couldn't keep putting it off. "Can I ask you something first?" "Sure." "Why me? Specifically. You've got engineers, quality control specialists, people with degrees and credentials and corporate experience. Why offer the job to a mechanic who barely graduated community college?" Victoria leaned back in her chair. "You want the honest answer or the diplomatic one?" "Always honest. Because everyone with degrees and credentials and corporate experience missed the biggest safety failure in my company's history. They had all the data, all the tools, all the expertise, and they missed it because they were looking at spreadsheets instead of wheelchairs. You looked at the actual product and saw what was wrong in minutes." She paused. "Also because when I asked you to inspect those components, you didn't ask what answer I wanted. You just told me what you found. That kind of integrity is worth more than any degree." "But it's right. I don't know how to be a corporate executive." "Neither do most corporate executives. They're just better at pretending. I'd rather have someone who's honest about what they don't know than someone who fakes expertise they don't have." Ethan thought about Rosa running his garage, about Lily asking when Daddy would be home, about the Henderson van, and all the other customers who needed simple, honest work done right. "If I take the job, I need conditions." "Name them." "I work from the warehouse or the prototype lab, not a corporate office. I spend at least half my time doing actual inspections, not managing people or going to meetings. And if I say something is unsafe, it gets fixed regardless of cost or schedule. No arguments, no committees, no business case analysis. My call is final on safety issues." Victoria didn't hesitate. "Done. Anything else?" "I need to keep my garage. Maybe not running it day to day, but I can't give it up completely. It's who I am." "Keep it." Rosa seems competent. Let her manage operations. You oversee quality and handle the jobs that interest you. Use the sync motion salary to stabilize the business. Invest in better equipment, whatever you need. You're agreeing to everything awfully fast. Because I already decided I'd agree to whatever you asked for, within reason. Fortunately, your asks are reasonable. She pulled out her phone, typed something. I'm having HR draw up a formal offer letter with those conditions. You'll have it tomorrow. Take another week if you need it. But Ethan, I really hope you say yes. Why does it matter so much? Victoria looked toward the warehouse floor where technicians were still working, processing recalls, fixing problems, making things right. Because I'm trying to build something better than what my father left me. A company that actually cares about the people using its products. And I can't do that surrounded by people who see customers as revenue streams instead of human beings. I need people who see what you see, who care the way you care. That's a lot of pressure to put on one hiring decision. It's not just you, it's what you represent. A different way of thinking about this work. James has it. Few other people scattered through the company have it. But I need more. I need to change the culture from the inside, and that starts with who I put in leadership positions. Ethan understood what she wasn't saying, that hiring him would send a message, that integrity and hands-on competence mattered more than pedigree, that the company was serious about change. I'll give you an answer by Friday, he said. Fair enough. Wednesday brought a development that changed everything. The preliminary criminal investigation into Derek Manning had uncovered evidence of systematic fraud extending beyond just material substitutions. He'd been billing sync motion for quality control procedures that were never performed, safety testing that was fabricated, inspections that existed only on paper. The financial fraud alone was approaching $2 million over 3 years. Victoria called an emergency meeting. Ethan sat in on it because apparently he was now important enough to be included in crisis management sessions. The lawyers were discussing prosecution strategies, civil recovery options, insurance claims. Ethan listened and tried not to feel completely out of his depth. The DA wants to move forward with criminal charges, Marcus Chen was saying. Wire fraud, falsification of safety documents, reckless endangerment. They're building a strong case, but they'll need expert testimony about the manufacturing defects and how they endangered users. Who would testify? Victoria asked. Ideally, someone who discovered the defects, can explain them in layman's terms, and has no financial stake in the outcome. Marcus looked at Ethan. Someone exactly like Mr. Cole. Every head in the room turned toward him. Absolutely not, Ethan said immediately. I'm not testifying in court. Get one of your engineers. Our engineers missed the defects, Victoria said quietly. Derek's lawyer will shred their credibility. We need someone whose expertise is unquestionable and whose motivations can't be challenged. My motivation is getting paid to consult on your recall. That's a financial stake. You were paid consulting rates for work you actually performed. That's completely different from being on the sync motion payroll. Marcus pulled out a legal pad, started writing. In fact, it makes you more credible. You're an independent contractor who identified problems, not a company employee with bias to protect his employer. I don't know anything about testifying. I'll mess it up. We'll prepare you. Mock testimony sessions, coaching on how to handle cross-examination, everything you need to be ready. Ethan looked at Victoria. Is this required for the job offer? No. The job offer stands regardless of whether you testify. But Derek needs to face consequences for what he did. And the people he endangered deserve to see justice done. Your testimony could make that happen. Could or will? Could. I'm not going to lie to you, trials are unpredictable. But without expert testimony about the safety implications, the case gets weaker. Derek might take a plea deal for reduced charges, might avoid real consequences entirely. Ethan thought about Patricia Summers, stuck upstairs for 2 days, about the woman who fell at the library, about all the people who trusted equipment that was designed to fail. Fine, he said. I'll testify, but I'm doing it my way. No scripts, no corporate talking points. I tell the truth as I understand it. That's exactly what we need, Marcus said. The preparation for testimony was worse than actually working the recall. Hours of reviewing documents, practicing answers to hostile questions, learning to stay calm when lawyers tried to twist his words. Ethan hated every minute of it, but pushed through because Victoria was right. Derek needed to face consequences. During a break in one particularly brutal mock cross-examination, James found him in the prototype lab looking at wheelchair designs like they were a puzzle he could solve. Hiding? James asked. Desperately. How do lawyers talk for that long without actually saying anything? It's a skill, not a useful one, but definitely a skill. James sat down at the workbench, picked up a hub assembly. Victoria told me you agreed to testify. She told you I was stupid enough to agree. Yeah. Not stupid. Brave. There's a difference. Doesn't feel brave. Feels like I'm being dragged into something way over my head. James turned the hub over in his hands. Can I tell you something about Victoria? When her father died, the board wanted to sell the company. They had offers, good ones. She could have walked away with hundreds of millions of dollars and zero responsibility. She was 27 years old, could have done anything she wanted. But she didn't. She fought to keep control. Borrowed against her inheritance to buy out board members who wanted the sale. Worked 90-hour weeks learning the business from the ground up, all because she believed her father built something worth preserving. Why are you telling me this? Because I've watched her sacrifice everything for this company for 3 years. Personal life, relationships, her own health. And she's been doing it mostly alone, surrounded by people who see her as the boss's daughter playing at being a CEO. James set down the hub. Then you show up. See her as a person first, billionaire second. Treat her like she's earned respect instead of inherited it. That matters to her more than you realize. Ethan didn't know what to say to that. She needs people she can trust, James continued. People who aren't trying to manage her or manipulate her or position themselves for advancement. You're one of maybe 3 people in her life who fits that description. So, yeah, testifying is brave. But so is everything else you've been doing. Telling her hard truths, pushing back when she's wrong, supporting her when she's right. That's what real help looks like. Thursday brought Lily to the warehouse because her school had a teacher development day and Mrs. Chen had a doctor's appointment. Ethan had tried to find other childcare, but eventually gave up and just brought her along, hoping she wouldn't break anything expensive. She was fascinated by everything. The inspection equipment, the wheelchairs in various states of disassembly, the technicians who patiently answered her questions about what they were doing and why. Ethan kept one eye on her while trying to work, constantly worried she'd wander off or touch something she shouldn't. Victoria found them during the lunch break. Lily was eating a sandwich and explaining to Ethan in great detail about the complex social dynamics of first-grade recess. And then Sophie said that Emma said that I said something mean, but I didn't, Daddy, I promise. I think Sophie just made it up because she was mad about the swings. Sounds complicated, Ethan said, only half listening while he reviewed an inspection report. It is complicated. Being 6 is very hard. Victoria rolled up, smiling. Hi, Lily. Remember me from the park? Lily looked up, recognition dawning. You're the princess lady with the special chair. Not a princess, just a person. But yes, I have a special chair. Want to see how it works? For the next 20 minutes, Victoria showed Lily all the features of her wheelchair, the elevation function, the tilt mechanism, the controls that made it move. Lily was completely enthralled, asking questions faster than Victoria could answer them. Why do you need a special chair? Lily asked with the blunt curiosity of children. Because my legs don't work the same way yours do. The chair helps me get around. Did you get hurt? Sort of. I was born with my legs working differently, so I've used wheelchairs my whole life. Oh, Lily processed this. Can I try? Victoria looked at Ethan. He shrugged. If it's okay with you. They found a training wheelchair one used for teaching new users. Lily climbed in, giggling, and Victoria showed her how to use the controls. She promptly drove into a wall, backed up, drove into a different wall, then figured out the turning mechanism and started zipping around the warehouse like she'd been doing it for years. She's a natural, Victoria said, watching with amusement. She's going to hurt herself, Ethan muttered, moving to intervene. She's fine. Let her explore. Lily eventually tired of the wheelchair and came back to where they were sitting. That was fun. Can I have one for home? You don't need a wheelchair, baby. Your legs work fine. But they're so cool and fast. They're tools for people who need them, not toys. Come on, finish your lunch. Lily went back to her sandwich, already distracted by something else. Victoria watched her with an expression Ethan couldn't quite read. She's wonderful, Victoria said quietly. She's exhausting, but yeah, she's pretty great. You're lucky, having someone who looks at you like you hung the moon. Most days it feels more like pressure than luck. I'm terrified of messing her up. The fact that you worry about it means you probably won't. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching Lily draw pictures on the back of scrap paper someone had given her. Ethan thought about James's words, about Victoria sacrificing everything for the company, about loneliness disguised as dedication. "Can I ask you something personal?" he said. "Sure." "When's the last time you did something that wasn't related to work? Something just for you?" Victoria thought about it. "I went to a museum about 6 months ago, lasted maybe 20 minutes before I got a call about a production delay and had to leave." "That doesn't count?" "Then I don't know, maybe a year ago, 2 years? That's not healthy," says the man who works 7 days a week and sleeps in his garage half the time. "I have a kid. That's different." "Is it? Or are we both using our responsibilities as an excuse to avoid having actual lives?" Ethan didn't have a good answer for that. Friday morning arrived with Ethan staring at the formal offer letter from Sync Motion. Everything they'd discussed was there in writing: the salary, the conditions, the autonomy on safety decisions. All he had to do was sign it, and his life would change in ways he still couldn't quite process. He called Amanda. She answered on the fourth ring, sounding distracted. "Ethan, is Lily okay?" "She's fine. I need to talk to you about something. I'm kind of in the middle of... I got a job offer. Real job, corporate position, 6-figure salary. But it means big changes. Thought you should know." Silence on the other end. Then, "Wow, that's great, I think. What kind of job?" He explained the basics, leaving out the parts about recalls and testimony and billionaire owners who apparently saw something in him he didn't quite see in himself. "So you'd be giving up the garage?" Amanda asked. "No, keeping it. Just not running it day to day anymore." "That's huge, Ethan. Congratulations." "Thanks. Listen, if I take this, my schedule might be less predictable for a while. Wanted to check if you wanted to adjust the custody arrangement, maybe take Lily more often." "I can't. Marcus and I are trying for a baby. It's a whole thing. My schedule's completely packed with treatments and appointments." "Of course." "Okay, just thought I'd ask. But seriously, I'm happy for you. You deserve this." They hung up, and Ethan felt the familiar mix of emotions that came with talking to his ex-wife. Relief that she was supportive, frustration that she couldn't be more involved with Lily, guilt about feeling frustrated when Amanda had her own life to live. He drove to the warehouse, found Victoria in her makeshift office, and dropped the signed offer letter on her desk. "I'll start Monday," he said. Victoria looked at the letter, then up at him, and smiled wider than he'd seen since they met. "Thank you. You won't regret this." "I already regret it, but I'm doing it anyway." "That's the spirit. Welcome to Sync Motion, Ethan. Let's build something better." That evening, Ethan took Lily to the park where he'd first met Victoria. They walked the same trail, past the spot where the broken wheelchair had been. Lily chased leaves and narrated elaborate stories about the secret lives of squirrels, while Ethan tried to believe he'd made the right decision. His phone buzzed, a text from Victoria. "Dinner tomorrow? Wanted to celebrate and discuss your transition plan. Bring Lily if you want. I know a place with good pizza and terrible arcade games." He texted back, She'll love the terrible arcade games. See you tomorrow." Lily came running back, out of breath and grinning. "Daddy, can we get ice cream? It's November. It's cold." Ice cream doesn't care about weather. That's what makes it ice cream. He couldn't argue with that logic. They walked to the shop 2 blocks over, got cones they didn't need, sat on a bench watching the sun set over the city. Lily got chocolate all over her face and didn't care. Ethan got chocolate on his jacket and didn't care either. "Daddy?" Lily said around a mouthful of ice cream. "Yeah, baby?" "Are you happy?" The question caught him off guard. "What makes you ask that?" "You've been smiling more, the last few weeks. Usually you look worried, but lately you look less worried. So I wondered if that means you're happy." Ethan thought about it, about the recall and the testimony and the job he'd just accepted, about Victoria and her impossible standards and her genuine desire to do right by people, about Rosa running his garage and the bills getting paid and Lily's winter coat that he could finally afford to replace. Yeah, he said. I think maybe I am. Good, Lily said seriously. You deserve to be happy. You're the best daddy in the whole world. You're biased. What's biased mean? It means you like me because I'm your dad. No, I like you because you're nice and you fix things and you always read me bedtime stories even when you're really tired. Being my dad is just a bonus. Ethan pulled her close, got chocolate on his shirt, didn't care about that either. Sometimes happiness snuck up on you when you weren't looking. Sometimes it arrived in the form of job offers and billionaire friends and daughters who thought bias was a bonus. Sometimes you just had to pay attention long enough to notice it was there. The pizza place Victoria had chosen was exactly the kind of spot Ethan would have picked himself. Worn booze, fluorescent lighting that had seen better decades, and arcade games from the 90s that ate quarters like they were going out of style. Lily's eyes went wide the moment they walked in. Can I play the games, Daddy? Please? Victoria was already pulling out a 20. Here, go wild. We'll call you when the pizza's ready. Lily snatched the bill and disappeared toward a racing game that looked older than Ethan. He watched her go, then turned to Victoria. You didn't have to do that. I wanted to. Besides, this gives us time to talk without little ears listening. She rolled toward a booth in the back, gestured for him to sit. How are you feeling about Monday? Terrified, excited, mostly terrified. That's normal. First day at any new job is scary. This isn't just a new job. It's a complete life change. 6 weeks ago, I was one bad month from losing my garage. Now I'm a corporate executive making more money than I know what to do with. Victoria smiled. You'll figure out what to do with it. New coat for Lily, for starters. Already ordered. Gets here Tuesday. He shook his head. It's surreal. Being able to just buy things without calculating whether I can afford them. Wait until you get your first paycheck. That's when it really hits. They ordered pizza. Half pepperoni for Lily, half vegetarian for Victoria, and Ethan realized he hadn't even asked if she had dietary restrictions. She caught him looking guilty. What? I should have asked what you wanted before ordering. You did fine. I'm not picky. She poured water from the pitcher the waitress had left. Can I ask you something about the trial? Sure. Are you actually okay with testifying, or did you agree because you felt pressured? Ethan thought about it. Little bit of both. Honestly, I don't want to do it. Public speaking makes me want to throw up, and lawyers make me nervous. But Derek needs to face consequences. If my testimony helps make that happen, then yeah, I'm okay with it. The DA thinks the trial will happen in March or April. They're still building the case, gathering evidence. You'll have plenty of time to prepare. That's supposed to make me feel better? Probably not. Victoria leaned back in her chair. I hate that you're getting dragged into this. You stopped to help someone in a park and ended up in the middle of a corporate fraud case. That's not fair. Life's not fair. If it was, you wouldn't be dealing with a massive recall because someone you trusted lied to you. True. She was quiet for a moment. James told me he talked to you about why I fought to keep the company. He did. Did he also tell you that half the time I have no idea what I'm doing? That I wake up every morning convinced I'm going to make some catastrophic mistake that destroys everything my father built? Ethan looked at her. Really looked. Saw past the expensive clothes and the billionaire status to the exhausted 30-year-old who'd inherited more responsibility than anyone should carry alone. No, he said. He left that part out. But I recognize it anyway. I feel the same way every time I look at Lily, like I'm one wrong decision from ruining her life. Does it get easier? Not really. You just get better at hiding the panic. Victoria laughed, and it sounded genuine. That's deeply unhelpful, but somehow comforting. The pizza arrived. Lily materialized from the arcade, chocolate from some candy she'd conned out of the prize counter smeared on her face. She climbed into the booth next to Ethan and immediately started talking about the racing game and how she'd beaten someone named Tyler who was probably 8 whole years old. They ate and talked, and for an hour it felt almost normal. Not a corporate executive and her new employee, just 3 people sharing pizza and bad arcade games. Lily convinced Victoria to try the racing game and proceeded to thoroughly beat her. Victoria took the loss with good grace and demanded a rematch. She's very competitive, Ethan observed. I'm a billionaire CEO. Competition is kind of my thing. Victoria lined up for another race. Also, I refuse to be beaten by a 6-year-old at a game I played in college. You're going to lose again, Lily said confidently. She did. Lily was ruthless. Driving home that night, Lily fell asleep in the back seat clutching a stuffed dinosaur she'd won from the claw machine. Ethan's phone buzzed at a red light. A text from Victoria. "Thanks for tonight. I needed that more than you know. See you Monday, Director Cole." He saved the text, not quite sure why, and drove home through streets that felt different somehow, like the city itself had shifted to accommodate this new version of his life. Monday arrived with the weight of significance. Ethan dropped Lily at school, drove to Sync Motion headquarters, and walked into a building where he now had an actual office. It was smaller than Victoria's, which was fine, and it had a window, which was better than fine. Someone had already put his name on the door. Director of Quality Assurance, Ethan Cole. He stared at it for a full minute before going inside. The first week was a blur of meetings, introductions, and learning systems that seemed designed to be as complicated as possible. Ethan met department heads who clearly had opinions about the mechanic-turned-director, but were too professional to say so directly. He sat through presentations about quality metrics and compliance protocols and manufacturing partnerships that made his head spin. But he also spent time in the prototype lab with James, learning the engineering side of what he'd been evaluating intuitively. He visited the warehouse, worked alongside the inspection teams, caught problems they'd missed because he was still better at seeing broken things than anyone else on the payroll. And he went to meetings with Victoria where other executives would propose solutions that sounded good on paper but would fail in practice. Ethan learned to recognize the pattern: smooth presentations, careful language, proposals designed to minimize cost rather than maximize safety. He learned to push back. "That inspection protocol won't work," he said during one meeting, interrupting a VP who clearly wasn't used to being interrupted. "It looks comprehensive on paper, but it's checking the wrong things. You'll miss the kind of defects that actually matter." The VP looked annoyed. "With all due respect, Mr. Cole, I've been designing quality control systems for 15 years, and I've been finding the failures those systems miss for just as long. No disrespect intended, but this protocol focuses on dimensional accuracy when the real problems are material composition and weld integrity. You're measuring the wrong variables." Victoria looked between them. "Ethan, can you explain what you'd change?" He could. Did. Spent 20 minutes redlining the proposed protocol while the VP got progressively more irritated. But by the end, even the VP had to admit Ethan's version was better. After the meeting, Victoria caught up with him in the hallway. "You're making enemies." "I'm doing my job." "I know, I'm not complaining. Just warning you that some people aren't going to like being contradicted by the new guy with no degree. They'll get over it, or they won't. Either way, I'm not going to approve protocols that don't work just to avoid hurting feelings." Victoria smiled. "Good. Don't change that. But maybe try to be slightly more diplomatic. You can be right without making people feel stupid." "I'll work on it." He did try. Got slightly better at softening his critiques, framing contradictions as alternative approaches rather than corrections. Some executives appreciated it. Others just resented him more quietly. The recall dragged into its third month. They'd processed over 3,800 units, replaced or refunded nearly 90% of affected customers, and the defect rate had stabilized at 71%. The financial damage was catastrophic. Victoria's initial projections of $12 million had proven wildly optimistic. Current estimates were hovering around $23 million and climbing. The board was unhappy. Ethan sat in on one of their meetings, watching Victoria defend decisions she'd made with his input and support. $23 million, one board member said, an older man whose name Ethan had already forgotten. For a recall that could have been handled more selectively. We could have limited the scope, required customers to demonstrate actual defects before replacement. We could have, Victoria agreed. We also could have waited for someone to die in one of our defective wheelchairs before admitting there was a problem. I chose transparency and comprehensive response over damage control and selective recall. That was my decision. A decision that's cost this company a significant portion of its annual profit. A decision that protected our customers and our reputation. The media coverage has been overwhelmingly positive. We're being held up as an example of corporate responsibility done right. That's worth $23 million. Is it worth your position as CEO? The room went silent. Victoria's expression didn't change, but Ethan saw her hands tighten on her armrests. "If the board wants to remove me, that's your right," she said evenly. "But I won't apologize for prioritizing safety over profit. That's not the company my father built, and it's not the company I'm going to run. Fire me if you want. I'll sleep fine either way." The board member backed down. They always did, Ethan was learning. Victoria had the majority share. They could complain, but they couldn't actually override her. After the meeting, Ethan found her in her office, staring out the window at the city below. "You okay?" he asked. "Define okay? Not currently throwing things or crying? Then yeah, I'm okay." She turned to face him. "They're not wrong, you know. 23 million is a lot of money. There were cheaper ways to handle this." "Cheaper isn't always better." "Tell that to our Q4 earnings report." "I'd rather tell it to every customer who got a safe wheelchair instead of a defective one." Ethan sat down in one of her visitor chairs. "You made the right call. The expensive call, sure, but the right one." "I hope so, because if I'm wrong, I just cost a lot of people a lot of money for nothing." "You're not wrong, and it's not for nothing. People are safe because of what you did. That matters more than quarterly profits." Victoria smiled slightly. "You always make it sound so simple." "It is simple. People complicate it because complicated serves their interests. But the actual choice is pretty straightforward. Protect people or protect money. You chose people. That's not wrong." February brought the trial date. Derek Manning had refused to take a plea deal, convinced he could convince a jury that he'd done nothing wrong. The DA was building a case around fraud, safety violations, and reckless endangerment. Ethan's testimony was scheduled for the second week. The preparation intensified. Hours with the prosecution team, learning to answer questions clearly, practicing staying calm under hostile cross-examination. Ethan hated every second but pushed through because the alternative was letting Derek walk away unpunished. The night before his testimony, Victoria came to his office. He was reviewing his notes for the 100th time, trying to memorize facts he already knew by heart. "You're going to be fine," she said. "You don't know that. I know you. You're good under pressure. You'll tell the truth clearly, and the jury will believe you." "What if I mess up? Say the wrong thing? Give them an opening to discredit the whole case?" Victoria rolled closer. "Then we deal with it. But you're not going to mess up. You know this material better than anyone. Just be yourself. That's enough." Being myself got me a failing garage and an ex-wife who thought I lacked ambition. Being yourself also got you this job and saved thousands of people from defective equipment. I'd say that's pretty ambitious." She paused. "Can I tell you something?" "Sure. When I met you in that park, I was having the worst day. Everything was falling apart. My chair had broken down. My company was producing defective equipment, and I was stuck physically and metaphorically with no idea how to fix any of it." She looked at him directly. "Then this random mechanic stopped to help. Didn't want money, didn't want recognition, just helped because someone needed help. And somehow that one moment of basic human decency changed everything. I just fixed your chair. You fixed more than my chair. You fixed my perspective. Reminded me why this company exists, to help people, not to make money. The money's supposed to be the byproduct of helping people well." She smiled. "So tomorrow, when you're on that stand, just remember why you're doing it. Not for me, not for the company. For everyone who trusted equipment that was designed to fail. Tell their story. The jury will listen." The courthouse was exactly as intimidating as Ethan had feared. All marble and wood paneling and formal procedures that felt designed to make regular people feel small. He sat in the witness waiting room, hands sweating until they called him. The courtroom was packed. Press, spectators, people from Sync Motion, including Victoria in the front row. Derek sat at the defense table looking confident and smug. Ethan wanted to punch him but settled for taking the oath and sitting down. The prosecutor started with easy questions, establishing his credentials, his experience, how he'd gotten involved in the case. Ethan answered clearly, keeping his responses simple and direct the way they'd practiced. Then came the technical testimony, explaining the defects, how he'd identified them, why they were dangerous. The prosecutor handed him the defective hub from Victoria's chair, the first one he'd examined. Ethan held it, remembering that afternoon in the park. "Can you explain to the jury what you found when you examined this component?" Ethan did. walked them through the fracture pattern, the wrong materials, the manufacturing defects that should have been caught and weren't. He didn't use jargon, didn't hide behind technical language, just explained it the way he'd explain a car problem to a customer. And in your professional opinion, was this hub safe for use? No. This hub was already fractured when I examined it. Under continued load, it would have failed completely. Best case, the chair becomes immobile. Worst case, it collapses while the user is in motion. Someone could have been seriously hurt. The prosecutor nodded. Thank you, Mr. Cole. No further questions. The defense attorney stood. Mid-50s, expensive suit, the kind of lawyer who probably charged by the syllable. He approached with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Mr. Cole, you're not an engineer, correct? No, I'm a mechanic. No formal education beyond high school? I did some community college. Didn't finish. So no degree in metallurgy, mechanical engineering, or materials science? No. Yet you're testifying as an expert about manufacturing defects and material composition. Isn't that outside your area of expertise? Ethan had been warned about this approach. I've been diagnosing component failures for 15 years. I might not have the formal education, but I have the practical experience. I know what broken looks like, and I know why things break. That's my expertise. But you're not qualified to determine whether materials meet industry specifications. I'm qualified to determine whether materials meet the specifications the manufacturer claimed they were using. Derek's company builds sink motion for 7075 aluminum. They provided 6061. That's not a matter of interpretation. That's fraud. The defense attorney frowned. You're making accusations. True. Audit. I'm stating facts. The metallurgical analysis confirmed what I found through visual and tactile inspection. The materials were wrong. The certifications were fake. People were endangered. Those are facts. The cross-examination continued for another hour. The defense attorney tried every angle, questioning Ethan's credentials, his motivations, his relationship with Victoria, his financial stake in the outcome. Ethan answered each question calmly, sticking to facts, refusing to be rattled. Finally, the defense attorney gave up. No further questions. Ethan stepped down, legs shaking slightly from adrenaline. He'd done it, told the truth, defended his findings, didn't fall apart under pressure. Victoria caught his eye as he left the witness stand and smiled. The trial lasted another week. Expert witnesses, financial analysts, former employees who testified about the pressure to cut costs and falsify documentation. By the time closing arguments came, the case against Derek was overwhelming. The jury deliberated for 6 hours. Guilty on all counts. Derek Manning was sentenced to 8 years in federal prison and ordered to pay restitution. It wouldn't undo the damage he'd caused, but it was something. Justice. Imperfect and incomplete, but real. Victoria threw a party at the office after the verdict. Nothing fancy, just pizza and beer and a room full of people who'd worked the recall celebrating that it was finally over. Ethan brought Lily because Mrs. Chen was out of town and he wasn't missing this. James found him near the pizza table, raised his beer in salute. You did good, kid. I'm 32, not really a kid. Everyone's a kid to me. I'm old enough to get away with it. James took a drink. Seriously, though, you held up under some nasty cross-examination. A lot of people would have cracked. A lot of people probably wouldn't have gotten involved in the first place. Exactly. That's what makes you different. James looked across the room to where Victoria was talking to Pemberton, laughing at something he'd said. She's different too, you know, lighter. She was drowning under the weight of this company when you met her. Now she's actually enjoying parts of it again. That's not because of me, isn't it? You gave her permission to care about the right things, to prioritize people over profits without apologizing for it. That's powerful. James clapped him on the shoulder. Don't underestimate the impact you've had. On her, on this company, on everyone who's using a safe wheelchair because you paid attention. March settled into routine. Ethan split his time between the corporate office, the prototype lab, and the warehouse. He developed new inspection protocols, trained quality control teams, and slowly built credibility with executives who'd initially dismissed him. Some still resented him. Most had learned to respect his expertise, even if they didn't like his delivery. His garage was thriving. Rosa had taken over completely, hired a second mechanic to handle overflow, and was actually turning a profit for the first time in years. Ethan still stopped by twice a week, handling specialty jobs that interested him, but mostly he let Rosa run things her way. Lily had adjusted to the new normal better than Ethan had. She liked the bigger apartment they'd moved into, loved having her own room, and thought it was hilarious that Daddy wore button-down shirts to work now. "You look fancy," she'd say, straightening his collar before school, "like a real grown-up." "I am a real grown-up, baby. Now you look like one, though." One afternoon, in late March, Victoria appeared at Ethan's office door looking uncertain. He'd learned to recognize her moods by now, the confident CEO mask she wore for board meetings, the exhausted honesty she showed in private, and this one, the tentative vulnerability she rarely let anyone see. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Always." "Are we friends? Like actually friends, not just boss and employee?" Ethan leaned back in his chair. "What brought this on?" "I was talking to my therapist. Yes, I finally got one. Don't look so smug. And she asked about my support system. I realized you're the first person I thought of. But then I wasn't sure if that counted, because technically, I'm your boss. You're also the person I text when Lily does something funny, and who I call when I need someone to tell me I'm not crazy for pushing back on bad ideas. So, yeah, I'd say we're friends." Victoria smiled. "Good, because I need a friend's advice, not an employee's opinion." "Okay." "The board wants me to start dating, not directly, obviously, but they keep making comments about my public image, about seeming more relatable, about the optics of a young CEO who's all work and no personal life." She made a face. "It's infuriating. So don't do it." "That simple?" That's simple. Tell them your personal life is personal, and they can focus on their own relationships." Ethan paused. "Unless you want to date. Then do it because you want to, not because some board members think it'll play well in press releases." "I don't even know how to date. I've been working 80-hour weeks for 3 years. When would I have time?" "You'd make time if you wanted to. Same way you made time for pizza and terrible arcade games." Victoria was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something embarrassing? Those are my favorite kind of things. I thought about asking you out about 6 weeks ago. Then I realized that would be wildly inappropriate given our professional relationship, and also you might have said yes just because I'm your boss, and then everything would be weird." Ethan wasn't sure what to do with that information. For what it's worth, I would have said no. That's somehow both reassuring and slightly insulting. "Not because of you," he clarified quickly. "You're great, but I've got Lily to think about. Dating someone I work with, someone who's this involved in our lives already, that feels complicated. And I don't need more complicated." "Fair enough." Victoria looked relieved more than hurt. "So we're good? Friends who don't date but do occasionally eat pizza and discuss corporate fraud?" "Sounds perfect to me." "Good. Because I actually value your friendship more than I would value a relationship that would probably implode and make everything awkward." "Same. Plus, you're kind of my boss. That's a whole thing." "Yeah, HR would have a field day." She stood to leave, paused at the door. "Thanks. For being honest, and for being someone I can ask ridiculous questions without judgment. That's what friends are for." April brought cherry blossoms and warmer weather, and a company retreat that Ethan tried very hard to get out of attending. Victoria wouldn't let him. "It's mandatory for directors and above. You're a director. Therefore you're going." "I don't do team-building exercises." "Neither do I. We'll suffer together." The retreat was at some conference center in the mountains, all rustic luxury and forced camaraderie. Ethan endured trust falls and group discussions, and a truly terrible dinner where everyone had to share their personal mission statement. His was, "Fix things, don't make it weird." James loved it. The board members looked confused, but there were good parts too. Watching Victoria relax away from the office, seeing her joke with employees and actually enjoy herself. A late-night conversation on the deck, where she admitted she was thinking about stepping back slightly, delegating more, trusting people to handle things she'd been micromanaging. "You've been telling me that for months," Ethan said. "I know. I'm finally listening." She looked at the stars, barely visible through light pollution even out here. "I think I was afraid if I wasn't working constantly, everything would fall apart. But it hasn't. You've been handling quality assurance better than I ever did. James is doing brilliant work on next-gen designs. The company runs fine without me controlling every detail." "So what are you going to do with all that free time?" "I don't know yet. Maybe learn to build wheelchairs instead of just designing them. Maybe take actual weekends off. Maybe figure out who I am when I'm not just Victoria Sinclair, CEO. Let me know when you figure it out. You'll be the first person I tell. May brought Lily's 7th birthday. Ethan threw her a party at the park, the same park where he'd met Victoria. Lily insisted Victoria be invited and was thrilled when she actually showed up with a present that was definitely too expensive. "It's a tablet," Lily announced, tearing through wrapping paper. "A real one, not the old broken one." "With parental controls," Victoria assured Ethan, "and educational apps. Very responsible gift giving." "It's too much." "It's exactly enough. Let me spoil her a little. I don't have kids of my own to buy impractical gifts for." They watched Lily run around with her friends, playing games that had no clear rules and made perfect sense to 7-year-olds. Victoria had brought a picnic blanket and parked her chair next to it, content to sit and observe. "This is nice," she said after a while. "Chaos and screaming children? Normal. This is what normal looks like." She gestured at the park, the families, the ordinary weekend afternoon. "I don't get a lot of normal." "You could, if you wanted." "Maybe. I'm working on it." She looked at him. "I'm glad you stopped that day. When my chair broke down. I'm glad you didn't walk past." "Me too." "Think we would have met otherwise, in some alternate universe where my chair didn't fail?" "Probably not. Different worlds and all that." "I don't think they're that different. You needed help getting your life stable. I needed help remembering what my company was supposed to be about. We helped each other. That's not different worlds. That's just being human." Ethan thought about that, about the distance between a failing garage and a billion-dollar corporation, and how maybe it wasn't as far as it seemed, about helping and being helped and the ways people's lives intersected in unexpected ways. "You're getting philosophical in your old age," he said. "I'm 30. That's not old. Tell that to my knees." They sat in comfortable silence, watching Lily open presents and eat too much cake and have the kind of perfect childhood moment Ethan had been working so hard to give her. His phone buzzed, a text from Amanda asking if the party was going well, if Lily was happy. Progress, maybe. Small steps toward being better co-parents. Summer arrived with heat and longer days and a rhythm that felt sustainable for the first time in years. Ethan's first anniversary at Sync Motion came and went with a small celebration and a bonus that made him stare at his bank account in disbelief. The company had recovered from the recall, profits were climbing, and the new Pro Series 5 was getting reviews that called it the safest wheelchair on the market. Victoria had indeed stepped back slightly, not absent, but less frantically present. She'd hired a COO to handle daily operations, freed herself up to focus on strategy and product development. She seemed happier, lighter, more like the person Ethan suspected she'd been before responsibility crushed her. They still had pizza sometimes, still worked together on quality protocols, still texted each other observations about corporate absurdity. The friendship had settled into something comfortable and genuine. One evening in late July, Ethan was walking through the park with Lily when they passed the spot where Victoria's chair had broken down. Lily stopped, stared at it. "This is where you met the princess lady, right?" "Right here." "What would have happened if you didn't stop?" Ethan thought about it, really thought about it. "I don't know, baby. Someone else probably would have helped her eventually." "But you helped her first, and then everything changed." "Yeah, I guess it did." "That's a good story," Lily said seriously. "You should write it down so you don't forget." "I don't think I'll forget." "People forget things all the time. That's why books exist." He couldn't argue with that logic. They walked home as the sun set, Lily chattering about summer camp and the swimming lessons she was taking and whether dolphins were smarter than dogs. Ethan listened and responded and felt something he hadn't felt in years. Contentment. Not perfect happiness, not the absence of worry, just the quiet satisfaction of a life that was working. His phone buzzed. "Victoria, board meeting tomorrow, need you there. They want to discuss expanding the quality assurance department." He texted back, "How early?" 8. "I'll buy you coffee." "Deal." Lily looked up. "Was that the princess lady?" "Her name's Victoria, baby." "I know, but she's still kind of like a princess. She has a castle and everything. An office building isn't a castle." It's tall and has lots of rooms and important people work there. That's basically a castle. Lily skipped ahead, then turned back. Daddy? Yeah? Are you happy now? Like really happy? The question stopped him. He looked at his daughter, at the park around them, at the life they'd built from almost nothing. Thought about the garage that was thriving, the job that challenged him, the friend who'd trusted him to help fix things that mattered. Yeah, he said honestly, I really am. Good, you worked really hard for it. They walked the rest of the way home hand in hand, and Ethan thought about all the ways one decision could change everything. How stopping to help a stranger could become helping thousands of people. How choosing integrity over expedience could transform a career. How small acts of decency could ripple outward in ways you never anticipated. The park where it started was behind them now, but Ethan knew he'd walk past it again. Would probably always remember that cold November afternoon, when he'd chosen to stop instead of walking past, when he'd looked at someone stuck and decided to be the kind of person who helped. That choice had cost him nothing and given him everything. Changed his life, and maybe Victoria's too. Saved people he'd never meet from equipment that would have failed them. And all of it started because he'd taught his daughter to be kind and couldn't quite bring himself to be a hypocrite in front of her. Funny how the world worked sometimes. How the smallest decisions could matter the most. How paying attention to broken things could teach you to see what needed fixing in your own life. Ethan looked down at Lily, still chattering about dolphins and swimming and 1,000 other things that mattered intensely to a 7-year-old. This was what it was all for. Making sure she grew up knowing that kindness mattered, that helping people was worth the inconvenience, that integrity wasn't negotiable even when compromise was easier. She was watching. She was always watching. And he was determined to show her a world where people didn't walk past stuck, even if he had to build that world one stopped moment at a time.